Nash. I am the City Council President, and I will be presiding this evening. Before we begin, I want to let everyone know that this meeting and all participating on Zoom will be audio and video recorded. I now call the City Council to order. Laura, can you please call the roll?
Sure. Councillor Elkins.
Here.
Councillor Foster.
Here.
Councillor Gore.
Here.
Councillor Jarrett.
Here.
Councillor Labarge.
Here.
Councillor Maori.
I see her here, but we may need to make her a co-host.
Let's see. Okay, I think she is a co-host, but she may not have had a chance to unmute, but we'll come back to her in just a moment. Councillor Moulton.
Here.
Councillor Nash.
Here.
And Councillor Perry.
Here.
Councillor Maori.
Here.
Okay, Council President, you have a quorum.
Okay, great. Now that we are convened, we will now take public comment. If you wish to make a public comment, please use the raise hand feature. The raise hand feature is on the bottom menu bar under reactions. If you are calling by phone, you can use the raised hand. Raise your hand by hitting *9. If you're having trouble raising your hand, you may use the chat feature to send a message to me and Councillor Foster, who is also monitoring the chat. To ensure equal access and because of open meeting law, technical problems such as not being able to raise your hand are the only thing the chat function is used for, and the chat function will only be available during public comment. We cannot accept comment over chat. Private chat or chat only visible on Zoom during a public meeting is antithetical to an open public process, in violation of the council rules for public participation, and violates the spirit and potentially the law of open meeting law. If you want to submit a written public comment, please email it to citycouncil@northamptonma.gov, and it will be sent to all councilors and will be part of the public record. I will unmute each raised hand in the order raised to make a comment. Before you begin, please state your name and your city or town for the public record. To ensure everyone has an equal opportunity to speak, the council limits comments to 2 minutes. You are in no way obligated to use the full 2 minutes, but if you do, after 2 minutes, I will ask you to please finish your sentence. If you set your Zoom screen for gallery mode, do we have the timer? We do not have the timer. So Councillor Foster will be our timer this evening and will let people know when their 2 minutes is up.
For the first couple, I'm working on it. So after the first maybe 2 comments, you should be able to see it in gallery mode.
Excellent, thank you. According to the council rules, we do not respond during public comment, as it is your time to speak. So while your comments should be directed to us, you will understand when we don't respond. Our rules also state that councilors and members of the public shall conduct themselves with civility and respect at all times. Your protected speech is a constitutional right and one that we ask you to wield with consideration and respect for all, and do so with the recognition that the public space that grants you that freedom is shared equally by everyone. Also, according to open meeting law, if someone is disrupting a meeting, they may be removed. You may speak on any topic. It doesn't need to be an item on the agenda. I ask that all but the council turn off your video until called upon. Only the person recognized has the floor, and all comments are to be directed to the City Council. This meeting can also be watched on Channel 15 or by streaming on Northampton Open Media's YouTube and other platforms. Okay, let's begin public comment. First up is Tracy Culver. Tracy, are you there?
Hi, yes, I am.
Welcome. You have
Thank
the
you.
floor.
I'm here to comment on the CPC request for $500,000 to be given to private developers from Holyoke. About 6 years ago, Look Park was struggling and asked the CPC for a few $1,000s to fix their fountain. Look Park is enjoyed by many taxpayers who contribute their tax dollars under the CPA. The park's request was denied because Look Park is privately owned. I was disappointed, but understood that public funds collected under the auspices of the CPA should not be used to help a private entity. St. John Campus is privately owned. How can the CPC allow the distribution of public funds to the Holyoke developers? Why no to Look Park, but yes to O'Connell? I feel the CPC has betrayed the public trust, and I think the current members should resign. I ask the City Council to restore that trust by voting not to fund this request. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Next up is Lizzie. And I think, Lizzie, your last name is B. Is that correct?
It is.
All right. Hello, Lizzie. You have the floor.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Lizzie. I'm speaking tonight about putting a cap on the number of dispensaries in the city of Northampton. And I'm speaking as a sober marijuana addict of 15 years and a longtime resident of Florence. Sober addicts know more about addiction than anybody else in this community. We can tell you more than any group of statistics or so-called experts. Please, please listen to us. The myth that pot is harmless is an extremely dangerous lie, one that hurts a lot of people, including adolescents. Almost every sober addict and alcoholic I know has pot as part of their using history. Pot is addictive and it can be dangerous. The saturation of 12 dispensaries in Northampton has made our small city less safe for those of us in recovery. It's impossible to run errands or walk downtown without having to see another pot shop. The owners of these stores are just well-financed versions of the old drug dealer on the corner. Those that only sell recreational pot do one thing. They help people get intoxicated for money. That is it. Why are they taking priority over those of us who have saved our own lives by getting sober? Why are they taking priority over the struggling addicts, the suffering families, and the children in this community? 12 is more than enough. Protect the most vulnerable in this city, and please vote to cap dispensaries as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Lizzie. Next up is Nick Motern. Did I have it right? Nick, correct me. You have the floor. Here, let's get you on. Oh.
Yep. Thank you very much. My name is Nick Motern. I live at 16 Strong Avenue. It's right around the block from the church that the developer wants to turn into, I guess, maybe medium and high income properties. I object to the city giving the developer $550,000 or any money for that matter. And I've done a little bit of study on this project, and I think that it needs a lot more thought about what this building is going to be used for, how it's going to affect the community, and certainly has to not have public funding. This money is needed for other things that really go much more to people who really need that kind of support from the community and from community services. So please count my vote as absolutely no on the CPA spending. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nick. Next up is, it says Claudia, but it looks like Mac. I guess maybe you guys are both taking turns. Hello, Claudia and Mac.
Hi, yes, this is Mac. We are going to take turns. First, I want to thank the CPC volunteers for their work and recognize they've been under great pressure to approve the St. John Cantius proposal. I too would like to see the church preserved. I signed the change.org petition along with some 1,600 other people. I expect a widely publicized fundraiser would follow to save the church, but alas, it did not. Now, the recent request for public funding has left me with 3 questions. First, is this an appropriate use of CPA money? Previous proposals to reuse the church for the nonprofit Center for the Arts and later as our resilience hub were rejected. They would have served the public good and enriched the community far beyond preserving a view of the exterior of the building and filling it with market rate housing. Second, doesn't this decision set a precedent? Current CPC members assured us it does not. What about 5 to 10 years down the road when newer members might look back and say, they gave money to the private sector back in 2022. We could do that too. Third, don't we have other pressing needs for CPA funds, such as citywide sidewalk repair, which is sorely needed, affordable housing lots for Habitat for Humanity, perhaps swimming facilities for our youth? Please ask your constituents, counselors. I'm sure they have a lot better ideas of how to use CPA money. Finally, back to number 1. In exchange for preserving an intentionally neglected building's exterior, we taxpayers are asked to help underwrite a private entity's profit. Let's pause the process and take another shot at finding a way to save the church without violating the public's trust in the CPA. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mac.
I'm going to wait till the end, go to the end of the line.
Okay, all right. We'll be watching for you, Claudia. Okay, next up is Michael Willers.
Willers.
No?
Yeah,
Oh.
thank you.
Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. So I'm Michael Willers. I'm a pediatric cardiologist. I live in Florence, and I'm here with my wife, Jordana.
Hi, and I am someone who works in the field of addiction with youth and marijuana.
So I wanted to comment, as Lizzie did, on the proposed cannabis shop in Florence in opposition to it for a number of reasons. Number one is the 12 marijuana shops that we have in Northampton have already changed the character of our town, and not for the better. In fact, we have more marijuana shops than anything else except maybe restaurants in Northampton. People will say, like, how is a marijuana shop any different than a bar or any different than a liquor store? But we actually don't have as many bars or liquor stores in Northampton as we have cannabis stores. It really has changed the character of our town for the worse. We're no longer a town of art and music and restaurants. We're a town of cannabis. And that's how we're known sort of wherever across New England, whenever I talk to friends, that's what is said. One of the issues from another issue is that what's clear is that the more cannabis stores there are, the more available cannabis is and the more usage there is. And that's a real problem where youth is concerned in particular. As a pediatric cardiologist, I see a lot of my patients come from Northampton. I have seen the level of addiction to cannabis rise since the stores have increased in number. And that's a huge problem. The cannabis lobby will tell us that, in fact, they will tell us that there is no such thing as addiction with marijuana, but that is clearly not true. And the science and the scientific papers will tell us that. In addition, cannabis, smoking marijuana leads to the same cardiopulmonary ramifications that tobacco does. The science is very clear about that. We don't know exactly what vape does, but I can tell you there's nothing good about heavy metals being inhaled into your lungs. So there's nothing good about—
Best time if you can finish your thought.
Sure, cannabis stores that we have in Northampton. As Lizzie had said, 12 is enough, and I would really appreciate a vote against the voting to cap the number of cannabis stores.
Thank you, Michael. Okay. Next up is Lizzie, I see your hand raised again. I think maybe I forgot to, if you could, anyway, I'm going to go to Caroline and, or is it Carolyn? Carolyn or Caroline?
It's
Welcome.
Caroline.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. My name is Caroline Johnson. I am a Florence resident, and I too am here to comment on the potential for a cap on adult use cannabis retailers. I live here with my wife and 2 young boys. And speaking as a proud member of this community and researcher who studies the impact of cannabis and the cannabis industry on youth health and well-being, I think it's critical to have a cap on the number of adult use cannabis retailers in Northampton. And I have particular concerns about the impact of dispensary density on youth use. My concerns stem from data. Without taking too much of a deep dive, I want to point out that empirical research is accumulating to suggest that the sheer number of adult use cannabis retailers in a town matters. And it's consequential for young people's attitudes about cannabis and their actual cannabis use. And the one study I will point out is a pretty rigorous longitudinal study that was published by RAND researchers. And it shows a very strong, clear link between adult use retailer density and young adults' cannabis use, and also their heavy use. As more and more dispensaries pop up here, so too does young people's use. One of the things I cherish about our Northampton community is our ability to think critically about things that have become normalized in our culture, and our ability to take unencumbered action, even when it means going against popular assumptions. And it's one of the reasons why Northampton has become home to so many LGBT people and families. So I ask all of you to please take pause and consider the negative implications of having an uncapped adult use cannabis market in our town. If you do, our youth will benefit greatly, as will our entire community. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Okay, next up, I'm seeing a phone number. Hello, 413-584, what is it? 8984. Who might be there? Hello? Hello, 584-8984. You have the floor.
Okay. Hello.
Oh, great.
Sorry, I was still on mute. This is my first time, and thank you for taking my call. And
You're
for all you
welcome, and I'm
do.
glad you figured out how to get on here using your phone. Welcome.
Thank you.
And your name
my
is?
name is Barbara Rakaska, 571 Florence Road. And I'm asking our city councilors to set up an ordinance to place a cap on the number of dispensaries in Northampton, Florence, and Leeds, and to please send it to the proper committees. Our residents need to have a voice on capping the dispensaries. Basically, something needs to be done, and I think a cap is one way to start. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay, next up, Ananda Lennox. Welcome, Ananda.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. You have the floor. Welcome.
I was trying to unmute myself and it said the host must unmute you, so I thought I was still silent.
Good.
I'm here. So my name is Ananda Lennox. I'm a resident of Leeds, Mass. I'm in Rachel Maori's ward. And I'm here to just add my voice to the other people who have said that they're in support of a cap on the marijuana dispensaries for Northampton. And I've worked in youth substance use prevention for the past almost 9 years now. And there's tons of research letting us know that youth use is on the rise, that it's not good for them, and that there's a big difference between adult use and youth use. And one of the unfortunate consequences of having so many dispensaries in such a small area is that, what we've learned from alcohol retail research is that high density does have a big impact on kids and how they normalize the idea of using, and they do use more. And it's also proven to be bad for them in areas that they congregate. So you don't want a dispensary near school. You don't want it where kids hang out just because they show that there's a tie-in with increased use. So I think what really got me to this meeting was, I think I was kind of numb to the number that were happening downtown because it's a little removed and it is a bit of a tourist hotspot. And so I think, I didn't like it, but I just was kind of like, well, it's what's happening. But now seeing it spread out kind of gave me pause. So like the Florence Pizza location, which is like dead center in Florence, where all I can picture is all the JFK kids coming out, like kind of having their like little bit of like young adult freedom. It's the only time you see them unsupervised. There aren't any like real cool activities to do downtown, but there's definitely pizza joints and Friendlies and Cumberland Farms. They congregate and they have a good time. And I just don't see how putting a pot shop in the mix of that is great, plus the close proximity to all of the recovery centers that are there that one of the earlier commenters was talking about. So I'm definitely just here to put my support for the caps and to ask if there's any way to reconsider where a Florence dispensary goes. Please don't put it on Main Street in the center of things. And it's really all I have to say. So thank you for having this meeting.
Thank you, Ananda. Next up is Fred Zimnock. Welcome, Fred.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here. My name is Fred Zimnock. I live at 23 Palmore Terrace. On August 24th of this year, at the CPC meeting, the chair, Brian Adams, reviewed comments about the CPC project and noted that all or almost all are in favor of historic preservation of the St. John Cantius Church. Most significant is the fact, at least for me, that this unique CPC project includes a historic preservation restriction on the outside structure of the church to be held in perpetuity. If this project restriction is granted by the Mass Historic Commission, then both the City of Northampton and the Northampton Historic Commission will oversee the terms of this historic restriction. So for all who value the historic and architectural aspects of the St. John Cantius Church, this is the most favorable outcome. It also preserves the streetscape that many in Ward 3 and the city admire. I hope you look favorably on this very unique CPC project. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Next up is Jane Potter. Welcome, Jane. Let's see if I can get you. You are on mute.
Thank you.
You have
Yes,
the floor.
Thank you very much. I'd like to start by saying that I applaud all the comments and completely agree with all the thoughtful speakers about capping the number of cannabis shops. And what I'd like to talk about is I would really like the committee not to conflate the saving of the St. John's Church, this Catholic church, with the issue at hand. And I think the issue at hand with the CPA money is setting a terrible precedent and really betraying the public trust by handing over $500,000 to a private developer. This is a developer who is already building 23 units. I'm sorry, I didn't mention Jane Potter, 42 Phillips Place. I live around the corner from the church. The developer has already put up many of the 23 units at $720,000 a piece and plans 10 more in the church proper. I really think it would be a horrible betrayal of public trust to give our well-earned tax money to this cause. I would also like to say that at the CPA meeting where, and respectfully, it was a thoughtful meeting, the Gazette didn't mention that there were probably 30 people there who completely disagreed with the use of these funds. going to the church. But the committee did say that they felt there was a great need for metrics to use in reviewing future projects, and a great need for much more transparency in the way that they decide on who gets CPA money. I really would encourage the city council to take that kind of deliberation. Unfortunately, the CPA committee decided to vote anyway, quickly. I don't think this is a quick vote. I think this is something that we need to think about quite deliberately. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jane. Next up, we have another phone number ending in 2731. And we'll give them a moment because unmuting with a phone can be difficult.
Hello.
All right.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome.
My name is Tom Bassett. I live at 40 House Street in Florence. And I want to
Welcome.
speak about two things very quickly. I support the idea of pot shops, but I think we need to definitely cap it. And my suggestion is twofold: that the mayor not sign the host city agreement until after there's another consideration for the location of this particular one, and trying to put in a cap of 12 before signing that host city agreement. Second thing is on the CPA. I'd like to say that we're setting the wrong precedent, as others have said, by giving it to a private entity, especially when they're not taking any effort to make affordable housing part of their project. I think that there's a lot of money that was given to them, and pretty equal amount of money given to the Bridge Road affordable housing project. And I would certainly like to see that St. John's be, that application be re-reviewed, and make sure we're asking the right kind of questions about what does it mean to Northampton. Is it really historic? Is it the right place to put this? Does it cause a precedent? I think there's, 3 openings on the CPA, maybe just 2. I think that they should also go back and look at some of the trainings that the original members of the CPA received from the Massachusetts CPC. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Next up is Rick Haggerty. Welcome, Rick.
Yes, hello, dear esteemed council members, 32-year resident of Northampton. Author Deepak Chopra states in his writing, there's only one principle about life that applies. Life is about fulfillment. If your life isn't fulfilled, your stomach can never supply what's missing. You seek fulfillment in overeating, you might be inviting ill health. While cannabis is legal in our great Commonwealth, I assert that if we encourage fulfillment in cannabis and continue without a cap or without limiting it, we run the risk of contributing to ill health if we haven't already done so. National Institute of Health, National Institute of Drug Abuse published a press release in August. Marijuana and hallucinogen use among young adults reached an all-time high in 2021. It states, quote, marijuana and hallucinogen use in the past year of adults 19 to 30 has increased significantly compared to 5 and 10 years ago, reaching historic heights in this age group since 1988. And past month, daily marijuana use on 20 more occasions in the past 30 days reached the highest levels ever recorded since these trends were first monitored. 1988, proportion of young adults who reported past year marijuana use reached 43% in 2021. Significant increase of 35% 5 years ago, 29% 10 years ago. And I sent the council and the mayor all of these statistics. Marijuana use in the past month was reported by 29% of young adults in 2021, up from 17% just a few years ago. So if we listen to so-called experts, such as an attorney acting as a past year of the marijuana legalization campaign, now touting Northampton as it, by where we should have another community meeting where, quote, everyone can speak and be heard, That's not the case, though, or attend cannabis meetings where no promise to deliver on a Zoom meeting is delivered with no PA system, where a paid consultant and attorney answer all the questions, or if these
That's
questions
fine,
in another
you can
community
stop.
are emailed with no interaction. I implore that we place a cap on the cannabis shops, and I thank the esteemed council members for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it much.
Okay, next up is Claudia Lefko.
Hi, Claudia Lefko, 40 Valley Street. I wrote to the councilors stating my concerns about the privileged status of many of the decision makers on city boards and committees that have weighed in on the proposal for CPA funding for St. John Cantius. Tonight, I want to address my city councilor and across the street neighbor, Jim Nash, on this issue. You and your family benefited from the activism, vigilance, and concern of Montview neighborhoods who were here before you. It was neighbors who helped save the Quadro parcel from large-scale development some 20 plus years ago, making it possible for a young family, your family, to afford a house and barn that sits on 1 acre of property surrounded by conservation land right in downtown Northampton. I know you've appreciated this, Jim, this quality of life, just as we have in our Ward 3 agrihood, the benefits of open green space, the feeling of living in a rural community just minutes from downtown. That's why it's so hard for me to understand and to accept why you vote with developers for development, whether it's 107 Williams or the CPA money for the church. Our commitment, the neighborhood and the community to maintaining the character and integrity of this neighborhood and the preservation of open space has made such a difference in your life as well as in my life. O'Connell doesn't have our best interest in mind. They're gentrifying the neighborhood, driving up housing prices and rents, and now they want our tax money. We expect you, Jim, and the rest of the councilors to have the best interests of the community and to listen to our legitimate concerns and vote appropriately. Please vote no on this proposal to use public funding for private profit and development. Send it back for rethinking. Ask O'Donnell, ask the church, ask St. John Cantius Committee to come up with the funds. And finally, I hope the city council will go back to in-person meetings and get off of this Zoom. It's very difficult. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Claudia. Next up is John Dunn.
Hi, I'm just.
Welcome, John.
I'm trying to do a few things here. I apologize. Yeah, so thanks for giving me a little bit of time to talk. I'm here to urge you to approve the funds for the preservation of this building, St. John Cantius Church. Historic preservation is a public good. It's been done many, many times. CPA money is used for historic preservation in this city. Been used many, many times to purchase open space from private individuals who received money from CPA. It's been used to support development of other kinds, some for nonprofits, some for profits. This use this isn't unprecedented or precedent breaking. This has happened many, many times before. And the idea of using public money to encourage, to incentivize, and as Fred pointed out, to guarantee the historic preservation of an important public resource is it's a no-brainer to me. You may not like the church. I saw somebody wrote a letter today and said, I don't like the building and I can't see it from my house anyway. Why would I want to have that building preserved? Historic preservation, in case anybody doesn't know, it's of real value to everybody in the community, not just the people who live next door to it or who see it every day. We have lost a lot of historic buildings in this city. We lost every historic building on the state hospital grounds. We continue to have other ones that get knocked down because nobody cares.
That's fine, John. You can
Okay,
finish.
well, this is an important building and I think it should be saved. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And thank you, Karen, for being the heavy here without that clock going. And okay, Jackie Balance, you have the floor.
Thank you, Councillor Nash. I'm here to support all the voices that have spoken tonight. I think we have a very well-informed community of citizens in Northampton, and I would like to see evidence that our elected representatives listen to their constituents. I want to hear some thoughtful discussion about funding CPC money for St. John Cantius Church, and I want to see lost my train of thought, trying to go back to what Claudia's point was. The other issue tonight, I'm blanking out. I would like to see a city council that doesn't always vote unanimously. I sometimes think that y'all are just rubber stamps, and I would like to see some real thoughtful individual responses to tonight's input from the people of Northampton. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Next up is Wendy Foxman. Welcome, Wendy.
There we go. First of all, I don't envy you decision tonight about the CPA. I think it's a very difficult one. I think there are good arguments on both sides, and I wish you well with that. Wendy Foxman, Ward 7 Leeds. I see at the very end of your agenda for tonight's meeting, perhaps 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, you'll be getting to cannabis regulations. I'd heard this topic was going to committees for discussion, then referral to council. So I hope this quick, late discussion won't be the end of your deliberations. I know you've been hearing from many, many constituents about capping the number of retail marijuana establishments. And as I said at your last meeting and in a follow-up letter to the mayor and council, please consider capping. We know because of the relative lack of rules and regulations around marijuana establishments in Northampton, there's little else besides capping the council can do formally about the Euphorium pot store plans to displace and locate in the current pizza factory shop. I'm glad to see that Mayor Scher is in attendance tonight. I'm asking the mayor to not enter into a host community agreement with Euphorium. The owners from Connecticut have no experience in retail sales, and this would be their first time in this industry. I said all this in a letter, so I won't repeat it right now, but they have no experience in this and failed in Palmer, where they tried to open another store. And now, after 2 unsuccessful attempts to hold a community outreach meeting, which is a really simple thing to do, they are planning a 3rd. And as I've said in my letter, if they can't get this simple step right, how will they be able to run a business? This 3rd meeting does not meet Cannabis Commission requirements. It was not legally advertised, and it is not allowing public participation at the meeting. Lastly, I find it odd a business that has received so much community opposition would even continue to plow ahead. I wouldn't. And if Phil Lippman, who is the new owner of the business block where Euphorium is hoping to occupy, is on this call or within earsight, please know that I and others would be happy to work with you to make your investment in Florence successful, including alternative businesses that would be suitable and welcomed. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. I just want to remind folks that to address the council, yes, the mayor is here, but that the public comment is to address the councilors. And I just want to say that, Wendy, I felt you were addressing us pretty much mostly there as well. So that's why I didn't interrupt you. So thanks. Next up is Bridget Glacken.
Thank you. I would like you to see my face, but I'm on some borrowed computer equipment tonight. I'm really happy I was unable to unmute. I live at 21 House Street in Florence. Currently, I came to Northampton in 1978 with my husband. We married at the Blessed Sacrament Church 6 weeks after we arrived. You may know that. That's older, and I think possibly more beautiful than St. John Cantius, but my friends who parishioners of St. John Cantius agree that was really beautiful there too. I wasn't there. I wasn't on that side of town. I was at St. Mary's. I want to say that you may wonder, for the first time in my life in Northampton, I had a letter published in the Gazette, and for those of you who read the Gazette, and this is the first time I've ever spoken at City Council. So I'm retired. I raised 4 children here. My ward's been moved around. I've been in Florence Center. We used to be in 5, now we're in 7. I hope the counselor in Leeds realized that. I know she does, the current one, but I was part of a small study group of retired people, and we walked around the city and we got interested in affordable housing, which is not your issue tonight. And we tried to answer the question. That's how I started. My part was to follow certain city communities to find out how we could solve this problem locally. And that brought me to becoming, in our little group, the person who would learn about the CPA funding, the CPC, the Northampton Housing Project, the Affordable Housing Trust, which was mandated by state law and got CPA money everywhere in Amherst, but not here. We're supposed to have that since 2014. So I started going to CPA meetings last fall. I saw the first iteration I saw a gallery owner downtown apply privately to restore the front of his building. I think it was built about 1932 for so-called historic preservation. And I saw the meetings of the O'Connell developers, who I know something about because I used to work in Holyoke and Springfield. And they're
you can finish your.
Okay. This is public money, not any public money. This is our money from our tax surcharge. It's not any public money. It's locally controlled. There is no public access to this. There is a church shell. That's what you're funding if you vote for this.
Thank you, Bridget. Next up is Elaine Mojo Jandu.
I can unmute.
I think you're unmuted. There you go. Welcome, Elaine.
Hi, thank you, counselors, for hearing us tonight. I just would like to say I would love to commend the Community Preservation Committee. I attended the meeting, the Zoom meeting, and the Historic Commission on their expertise in coming to the unanimous decision to support CPA funding. They read 61, there were 61 letters, and of these 61 letters, there were 48 people, supporters of the CPA funding, and only 13 opponents. And also the petition that was sent around, there are 1,700 signatures for that to support St. John Cantius. By having so many letters of support for CPA funding, it's clear that the citizens of Northampton have spoken for the charm and the culture of downtown Northampton. Please support the CPA funding and keep our city historically enriched. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elaine. Next up is Maury.
Hi, it's actually not Maury. My name is Brian Adams.
Brian Adams. Oh, hello, Brian Adams.
I live on 9 Hayward Road in Florence, and I'm the chair of the Historic Preservation Committee. I would like to assure the council that the Historic Preservation Committee certainly did our due diligence in consideration of the St. John Cantius proposal. We met in the spring with the developer after reviewing their proposal. We had a public meeting in the spring. We deferred recommendation on the proposal as we had the Historic Commission take a look at it and had O'Connell hire a certified historic preservation consultant to do a historic structures report. It was not without agony that we came to a unanimous conclusion to support the project. All of us were very supportive of historic preservation, of the historic preservation as a public good, of respecting the Polish heritage that went into construction of this building. All of us were looking at the issue of supporting a private company, in this case Adano, but knowing or being assured that without our support, the building would come down. The building will be demolished. And for the city's role in giving $500,000, we would get a historic preservation restriction held by the Historic Commission. The building would conform to the Secretary of Interior's historic preservation standards, that it would be in accordance with the historic structures report, that Adano will have the guidance of a qualified historic preservation consultant who will be around for the duration of the project. So again, I think this is one of those, don't let the perfect get in the way of the good. We are all in favor of having the building be used for another purpose, but that's not the case, and that's not happening. And given the fact of raising the church or continuing, we encourage you to go by the recommendations set by our committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, next up, I see Tracy Culver again. Tracy, you've already had the floor. So I am going to move on to somebody here. It says Joanne's iPad. Joanne's iPad.
Hi, this is Joanne's iPad, and it's actually Joanne Makowitz, and I apologize for not. I actually wasn't here in the very beginning, but I just want to say that I think it's in paramount that we save the facade of the church, because we don't need other vanilla structures in our neighborhood. And I agree that public funds need to be very thoughtfully used. And I think that before people make harsh judgments or quick judgments on the CPA's agreement and unanimous decision to approve the funding, I would strongly and vigorously suggest that they watch the Zoom meeting that happened. They were so thoughtful, and they're intelligent. They spend a lot of time and energy on something like this, that they did not come to this decision frivolously. And if you watch the Zoom meeting, I think you would understand and agree on many of the terms. And also, we the public do, sorry, I lost the wording, but the public does have access. Streetscapes are very important. And I agree that we need more housing for, people of ill means. This isn't where we don't need to raise this building in order to do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joanne. Okay, next up is Matt Brewster.
Good evening.
Welcome, Matt.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Matt Brewster. I live at 67 Chestnut Street in Florence. I'm a parent of young children. You can maybe tell from my video, I'm hiding in my basement to join this call. Just wanted to briefly comment in support of the cap on the dispensaries. Few supporting points. I think it's a start. I do feel like the right balance on cannabis for the community require more consideration. Heard several thoughtful facts and observations from other commenters tonight, and I think all of those suggest that the cannabis issues and the Euphorium license request deserve more scrutiny, and that's why I'd like to see the city start with a cap on the dispensary licenses. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Okay. I think we have reached the end of the queue, but I'm going to give a look through here. Going once, going twice. Last chance to raise your hand. Okay. We have concluded public comment. And thank you, everybody, for sharing your thoughts this evening. Next up we don't have public hearings, announcements from councilors and the mayor. I have an announcement I just want to make at the start here.
I said my piece and the public comment is done.
Oh, you said something? Hey, Joanne. Joanne, we're all done here. All right, I think she's muted. All right. I think I heard Bill there. So back to my announcement. For the September 15th meeting, I won't be attending, and filling in for me will be Vice President Foster, and I think council will be in good stead. And not to steal anything from Councilor Gore, but she won't be there as well. That we'll both be traveling separately, but we will not be attending the next meeting. So I just wanted folks to know that. Are there any other announcements? Councilor Jerry.
Thank you. Florence Night Out is coming up on Saturday, September 24th, starting at 4 p.m. The main street in Florence will be closed to vehicles and open to everyone else. And it's a celebration of art and music, performance, and businesses of Florence. And you can find out more at florencenightout.org.
Thank you, Councilor Jarrett. Councilor Labarge, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Just a quick notice and a reminder of the roadway construction, to inform that the Northampton Department of Public Works is coordinating a project to resurface West Dayton Road, West Farms Road, and a portion of Florence Road with a cap seal. The contractors performing this work are Indus and Allstate Materials. I have been working very, very closely with the supervisor from Indus, and I want to thank him and his crew. As a counselor, I'm out there mostly every day, hearing from my residents concerns of the storage lifts that they're doing and the big holes around them. The barrels, I finally got them to put lights on some of them because of barrels being hit by pickup trucks, and it's pretty bad. But anyways, I want to thank that supervisor for working with me as closely as possible and making it safe for everybody using all three portions of the roads that are being taken care of. And I'm asking you to get on the city's website at northamptonma.gov/2395/construction/updates. And you'll know exactly the dates that all of this is scheduled for on the first layer of chip seal, September 7th through September 9th. And the second layer, the microsurface, is scheduled for September 16th through September 27th, excluding naturally Saturdays and Sundays. So that's it. And it's been very interesting out here. And they asked me if I wanted one of their hats, and I said, no, thank you.
Oh, so you could have had a hard hat. Cool.
No, it was a soft one.
Okay, do we have other announcements? Oh, the mayor's wearing something.
I
Oh,
hope.
no, that's her seal is on her head. It looks like a crown.
I know it did.
Now that would be an announcement if I wasn't.
Whoa.
I was thinking more of a halo, really.
Yeah.
The seal back there. Good evening, Counselor. First of all, I would like to wish a happy first day of school to our 2 districts. So Smith Voke Agricultural High School had their first day on Monday, and then Northampton Public Schools had their first day today. So happy first day to everybody, to the caregivers. It's always an exciting day. And okay, second, I've got a few different, so next weekend's a big weekend. Starting on Friday, we have the 12th annual Chalk Art Festival, which is downtown. So that's Friday, September 9th. I believe the announcement of the winner of the festival of the competition is at 5 p.m. in front of City Hall, but please come downtown and see all the beautiful chalk art. And then after you do that, head on over to Paradise East open mic night at Historic Northampton. This is 6 to 8 p.m. If you go on the Historic Northampton website, it says that I will be performing. I hope we're going to take that term performance very loosely. I don't yet know what I'll be doing, but I will be participating, and I encourage everyone to come down to the open mic night. And then the next day, Saturday, I just want to remind everyone that the Taste of Northampton is back Saturday, September 10th, 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. So Main Street between the Rainbow Crosswalk down to King Street and Pleasant Street is going to be closed off and filled with amazing food from our local restaurants, live music, salsa dancing, all sorts of activities. It's going to be a really fabulous time. So everyone get excited for that. So again, next weekend, get ready. It's going to be a big party in Northampton. So I look forward to seeing everyone there.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I see your events and I raise them. Let's see, this weekend, there's the 3 County Fair going down in Ward 3. And that this is the 205th year of the fair. And so residents are encouraged to go down there and check that out. That there is also the Doozy Doo Parade. I don't think anybody's quite sure what that is, but it should be worth showing up for. That's on September 11th, and that's at 11 a.m. It starts at 33 Hawley and then will end at Pulaski Park. And that's sponsored by Northampton Neighbors, and that is, people are encouraged to go down there and see exactly what it is, because I'm not quite sure they know what it is yet. And is Pam Powers here? Does she want to plug the election next week?
I don't want to interrupt, but the Doozy Doo Parade is September 17th. I just wanted to make sure.
What did I say?
You said the 11th.
Oh, it's at 11 a.m. Thank you. And we have the election next week from starting, polls open at 7 a.m., close at 8 p.m. And also early voting is going on this week at City Hall. So come on, Mayor, see if you got more. Anybody else? Oh, Councilor Maori and Councilor Perry. Councilor Maori first.
Yep, I just wanted to announce the annual chicken barbecue from the Florence Civic and Business will be from 12:30 to 3 on, I just want to make sure I get the right, September 11th. 12 to 3, there'll be local corn, chicken, music. It's always a lot of fun. I'll be slinging chicken there, so you can come and talk to me and keep me on task. And you can get tickets really anywhere in downtown Florence, the Bird Store, the Float Diner, the Pie Store, the Murdoch's Jewelry. They're $20, and they support Florence Civic and Business. So I hope to see you there, 12 to 3, September 11th. Thanks.
Okay. Counselor Perry.
Nice. Well, keeping with all of this outdoor excitement, I want to let folks know that this is the last weekend for the Masonic Street Live event. I think it's been a great addition to our ever expanding outside events. Some, we started Summer Strong the year before. We expanded that, so that'll keep continuing. But this Friday, September 2nd, from 6 to 8, there's going to be a DJ, and then a very popular Monday night, 6 to 8, salsa event is going to happen as well. So I just want to thank Brian Foote and the city for putting all these events on and bringing some arts and culture to our city. So show them some love. It is behind the Haymarket and in that parking lot across from Patrick's.
Thank you, Counselor Perry. Boy, a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other announcements? Okay. So next up is presentations. Mayor, you don't have any presentations. Nope. Okay, next up is the consent agenda. So
Counselor-
go ahead.
Sorry, I know I keep interrupting. I can't get anything off our agenda. I can't see all of the items. Can we have a 5-minute recess so I can try to get myself to where I can see everything to participate? Let's try to handle that.
Yeah, that seems completely reasonable.
Yeah, I can't get anything on the city website. I can't click any of those links and pull anything up.
Okay. So let's take a 5-minute recess. We'll come back at 8:08, and that Counselor Foster, I'll stay right here while you try to figure stuff out.
Thank you.
It's likely it might be happening to other people as well. So
Yeah, I'm gonna end the Zoom meeting on my phone, and I don't know if you or Laura have the packet, the PDF packet that you can email me. I can get my email, but I just can't get anything off the city website.
Unfortunately, there's no packet, a PDF
There's not?
document.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, all I could do is send you a link for individual documents, which would. That's weird. I'm able to open all of the links on the one I have open.
Laura, I think I can download a PDF. I'll send it to Councilor Foster.
Oh, I'm so, you know what? I didn't even realize it creates one, the website.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That, you're right. I've never even accessed that. I always use the HTML.
I'll send it to Councilor.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I feel so.
I realized I could have, I would have.
Thanks. So I'm going to leave this meeting because I'm on my phone right now and switch over to my computer, and hopefully then I'll be up and participating. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, it's 8:08. That was a great break for me. I got to work on my Johnny Cash bass line strumming. I'm working on that. So if you hear me going boom, bop, doom, that's
Where you're going in?
Jim, I have to tell you, there's a band playing about a block over. And since I'm on my front porch, I can hear from my front porch. You can't have that when you're in city council chambers. That's all I'm saying.
yeah. I hear what you're saying. Yeah, it's good.
I
So
like that humming, Jim.
thank you. Maybe I'll provide a little more as the night goes on. And maybe the mayor will join me over at Paradise East sometime.
Hey, Councilor Elkins, I hate to refute you, but I am in City Hall and there is definitely music playing across the street that I can hear, so.
Are you hearing the same music?
Burn.
Okay, all right, it's time for me
No,
to
we're not gonna
wrangle
change
this,
it,
wrestle
Jen.
this
It's a
meeting
whole
back to
other
order. And everybody socializing is complete? Okay, all right. Next up on the agenda is, oh yeah, Councilor Foster, you good now? I don't know if Councilor Foster, are you able to get the agenda and items now? She's giving me a thumbs up. I guess she, okay.
Probably can't unmute.
Oh, she can't unmute? What the heck?
I just made her a co-host again, so she should be able to
okay.
now.
Thank you. And thank you, Mayor. I now have everything and I can unmute. So thank you all for your patience.
Okay. All the other counselors good? Okay, I see nods. All right, good. All right. Next up, the consent agenda. I'm going to read through it and counselors can request a removal. That anything on the consent agenda is not up for discussion unless it's removed from the consent agenda. So we have the minutes of the August 18th, 2022 council meeting. We have item 22.154 in order to reprogram funds for Forbes Library restroom ventilation project. We have item 22.161 in order to appropriate FY 2023 CPA funds for community preservation purposes. I'm going to ask that we remove that one. Next, we're up to item 22.169, appointments to various committees. These are for referral to city services. To the Arts Council, we have Kay Carroll. To the Conservation Commission, we have David Reckow. To the Board of Registrars, we have Mary Lou Stewart. And that is the consent agenda. Are there any other requests for removals? Hearing none, I'll consider a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Labarge, seconded by Councilor Moulton. There's no discussion. Laura, roll call, please.
Councilor Elkins.
Yes.
Councilor Foster.
Yes.
Councilor Gore.
Yes.
Councilor Jarrett.
Yes.
Councilor Labarge.
Yes.
Councilor Maori.
Yes.
Councilor Moulton.
Yes.
Councilor Nash.
Yes.
And Councilor Perry.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Per the council rules, that the removal is now the next thing that we take up, and I requested 22.161 related to the CPA funds, and Sarah LaValle is here, correct? I saw her somewhere in here.
Saw her earlier.
She could pop in. There she is. Hello, Sarah, welcome. And so Sarah and I talked a little bit earlier today. Actually, we've talked a few times this week. But I felt that this item, taking just a quick review of it at this juncture as we're considering awarding CPA funds and having that this is the budget from which any awards from this round are going to be coming from. And having a chance to just understand how, we're allocating funds and how we can get up to certain amounts. I felt that this would be a good time to have that overview and discussion. So, maybe the best way to go would be, Sarah, are there any things you want to share first around CPA in general before we talk about this, or do you want to just dig right into this particular order to describe, to go into how we do the funding for the CPA?
Sure. So maybe I can just start with an overview of what this order is. I know the finance director was at the last meeting and provided you
a
background from that perspective, but maybe a little bit different perspective. So this is an order that reserves and sets aside money for that we anticipate receiving in revenue in FY23 for CPA purposes. So we're anticipating receiving about $1.5 million in local assessment funds, plus an estimated $702,000 in state match. That's the 35% base state match, and a guess at this point for some additional rounds to be provided to Northampton. And those $252,837 set asides are 10% of the estimated revenues into historic reserve, affordable housing reserve, and the open space reserve, and that is mandated by state law. So 10% of total revenues have to be spent or set aside for those purposes, and putting them into these reserve accounts makes sure that will actually happen. 75,000 into administrative, and then paying back some bonding costs from prior recommendations. Most of our bonding has been paid back, but there's a little bit left for Pulaski Park and Florence Fields. And I guess that's about it. There are some additional revenues available for spending in FY23. So those are surplus state match, additional local funds that were received above the estimate, and some project funds that were returned, as well as a little bit of interest that the CPA funds received.
Thank you. And Sarah, so from from council's eye, we look at this like, oh, this is going to be our CPA budget for the year. But as the year goes on, that these numbers don't always, they tend not to match what gets awarded. And that in the case of there's an item later on our agenda that is larger than any of these budgeted amounts here. And I don't want to get into discussing that now, but that let's say there were, some for, let's say for open space, that there was an acquisition of $600,000, that money would be drawn from that 252, but there could be other ways to build up the available funds to get up to that acquisition cost, correct?
Sure. So, this is a little over 10% of what we're estimating in total revenues that's being sort of divvied up into these three accounts. And it will sit there until we have a purpose to spend it on. So say there were no open space projects in FY23. that money being set aside into that account will remain there through FY24 and, into the future until there's some open space project to spend that on. And also the remainder of the funds that aren't put into those 3 set aside accounts are put in a general fund that we can take from any allowable CPA purpose.
Okay, so outside of this, there are funds that aren't designated that the CPC can use to augment whatever's in these accounts.
Correct. So that this order is putting aside, find it, 1.46 million into the budgeted reserve, and that's the general pot that can be taken from for any allowable CPA purpose. And in addition to that, there's about $500,000 from the additional revenues from FY22 state match that we weren't expecting, and some other income sources that are also available in that general pot.
So there's past reserves that are also available for the CPC.
Correct.
Okay. And these are the types of moving these funds around will explain how we can fund any particular project, including one that's going to be later in the agenda.
Correct. So this is something that council does at the beginning of every fiscal year. If council didn't approve this order, we wouldn't technically be able to have any money available for CPA funding.
Right. Okay. So that was helpful for me. And is there an overview that we had discussed, like giving council like a quick overview on CPA, and do you want to do something like that now or wait till later, or?
At council's pleasure. Happy to do it now or later, up to you.
Well, I think since it relates more generally to the way we fund things and from this, 10-mile up view that we're at right now, it might be a good place to do that.
Okay, sure. So just going to our Community Preservation Committee website, I do encourage people who are curious about the CPA and the CPA in Northampton in particular to check out the website. There's a lot of resources there that provide additional information about what the CPA is, what the Community Preservation Committee does, how they're formed, and what this is all about. The CPA is Chapter 44B of the Massachusetts General Laws, and what that did was allow communities to create a local community preservation fund through a surcharge of up to 3% of the real estate on tax levy on real property, and Northampton went with that maximum 3%. Which also provides some additional state match. The Act also creates a matching fund, which I just mentioned, that sort of fluctuates every year depending on budget surplus and how many CPA communities there are. CPA funds may be used for acquisition and preservation of open space, preservation and restoration of historic buildings and artifacts, for the creation, preservation, and support of community housing, as well as for the acquisition, creation, preservation, and rehabilitation of land for recreational use. Residents of Northampton voted in November 2005 to adopt the CPA, and the first projects were recommended for funding in 2007. And through the end of 2022, we funded about 165 different projects.
And in terms of and I can see it on the website here, that historic preservation, basically 23% has gone to historic preservation, 25% to affordable housing, 29% to open space, and 23.5% to recreation. And in terms of spending CPA money, are we meeting our goals here with this spread of spending?
I mean, they're pretty even among those different categories. They do fluctuate over time, and sometimes there will be a really big affordable housing project. Last fiscal year there were 2, There was a housing for homeless individuals as well as the Prospect Place project. So that pulled that affordable housing number up quite a bit. But it does fluctuate over time based on capabilities of the city's project partners and what's going on out in the world.
Okay, and in terms of, so this is again big picture. So have there been any affordable housing projects that we haven't funded in the last year?
No. CPA has recommended, or CPC has recommended, and council has approved every affordable housing project that's been presented. They haven't all been funded at the full amount that was requested. So sometimes there are different mechanisms, even through city sources, to be able to make the numbers work. Sometimes we can work out with an applicant sort of a slightly lesser amount, or to be funding up into different fiscal years, but they've all been funded.
Okay. And do you expect any affordable housing applications coming forward this year that we won't be able to fund?
It's hard to say. The community preservation fall funding round is just beginning. There are initial one-page application forms just to make sure that something is actually eligible for CPA funding, because it is sort of a complicated and quirky law, and some things that are really great ideas that should move forward can't do so with CPA funding. But we don't know what's actually going to be submitted for project applications this round.
Well, you do have a general idea by the one page, what you were just describing, right? You don't know the exact details, but you have an idea of who the applicants are going to be, correct?
Yeah, there's I don't know if it's a nonprofit or a private entity, but someone who's looking at buying a house and making it affordable. Habitat for Humanity is likely coming in this round, and the city is also coming in with a few different projects.
Okay. All right, I think, councilors, any other questions? Councilor Maori.
Yeah, you mentioned the matching funds from the state, Sarah. I'm trying to understand that. Is it, are they project based, or is it just kind of a sum that's always matched for the budget for the?
So there's a formula to it, and it also depends on how many CPA communities there are, what the registry of deeds receipts were. That's what a lot of the state match comes from. So it's fluctuated over the years. When the CPA first started, Northampton received 100%. So we were get every dollar that we got in local funds was from taxes was matched by the state. That went down to as low as 30. No, actually lower than that. It went down to as low as 20%. And last year it was back up to 55%. So we received $764,000 in a state match last year.
So Sarah, is it based on, it's not like affordable housing or historic preservation? That's not what it's based on, the matching funds, right?
No, it's based solely on what a community's estimated revenue will be.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you. And I did have a follow-up question, but I can wait and see if another counselor has a question.
Go ahead, Rachel.
All right. I was just curious, like how, this is broad, but like how do you attract applicants, or how do you average, and I remember when we had a conversation about affordable housing grants, that we were talking about how do we kind of, it really depends on who's applying to some extent. And so how do you make that happen, and how do people find out about it? And so I was just curious about that. I mean, do you, because you're kind of dependent on whoever decides to develop these forums and apply,
Yeah, it was more difficult to get the word out when the CPA was brand new in Northampton. Over time, people have really gotten to know the CPA and what it's all about and what it can be used for. Especially with affordable housing. I don't think there's an affordable housing developer out there who hasn't experienced the CPA, hasn't utilized it in Northampton or another community, or at least is aware of it as a potential funding source. So
Habitat for Humanity, Valley CDC, community builders are some applicants that we've seen several times previously. But people in general for those larger projects are definitely aware of it. We do also have a listserv that we make announcements on, and we have done press releases, although they're not always picked up. Some are, some are not.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Okay. Councilor Maori, you have another question.
Well, I just wanted to check on Councilor Foster was having some issues. I just wanted to name that she may or may not be able to be on the meeting. So she's working on it.
Okay, thank you.
We're not voting yet, but I just wanted to, while I have the floor, I wanted to tell you that she's lost in cyberspace and we hope to get her back.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions or thoughts around this? That people want to fill a little airtime while we, hopefully Councilor Foster can get back to join us. Well, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve this item, which is in second reading and was pulled from the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Okay, was that Councilor Elkins? And then
Councilor Maori, but I'll second.
Okay, so a motion made by Councilor Maori, seconded by Councilor Elkins. This is a motion to approve 22.161 in order to appropriate FY 2023 CPA funds for community preservation purposes. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Laura, roll call, please.
Councilor Foster would be the first, but I don't see her back yet. So come back. Councilor Gore. Yes. Councilor Jarrett.
Yes.
Councilor Labarge.
Yes.
Councilor Maori.
Yes.
Councilor Moulton.
Yes.
Councilor Nash.
Yes.
Councilor Perry.
Yes.
Councilor Elkins.
Yes.
Just one more attempt for Councilor Foster. But okay,
He's
so
not
she'll be
back
absent
yet.
from this vote.
That is disappointing. Okay, all right. So that item has been approved and we're on to the next thing. And that we are up to financial orders. These are on first reading. We have an order to suspend parking fees on certain days. Let me see if I can pull this up here. Here we go. There we go. I'm gonna have it in a second. Certain days, there it is. Watch it be really short. Yeah, here we go. On the following, in order to suspend parking fees on certain days, on the following days, collection of fees for on-street and off-street parking spaces, excluding the EJ Gare parking garage shall be suspended. Saturday, November 19th, Friday, November 25th, Saturday, November 26th, Saturday, December 24th, Saturday, December 31st. I'm pretty sure I know what this is, and maybe the mayor wants to briefly speak to it.
Sure, it's pretty self-explanatory. I know it's still very much feels like summer, but we are planning ahead for the holiday shopping season. So these are the days that we suspend parking to just help people come downtown and please come and shop at our wonderful businesses. So we're just kind of getting a jump on the season and getting this to you now.
Okay, thank you. Councilors, this is a financial order. So that means we're going to either send it to the Finance Committee or put it on the consent agenda at our next meeting.
Make a motion to refer to the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion made by Counselor Labarge and seconded by Counselor Moulton to put this item on the consent agenda of our next meeting. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Laura, roll call please on putting this on the consent agenda.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Moulton,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes.
and Counselor Foster. Still not with us.
Okay. Do we know if she might be back? Has she texted anybody?
Yeah, she's thinks she'll be back momentarily.
Okay.
If not, Jim, we'll have to send you with a rope through cyberspace a la Poltergeist. You have to be over 40 to get that reference, but anyway.
I'll do it if it's good for council. I will go into the.
We know you will.
Okay. So next up, we have 22.167 in order to appropriate $500,000 in CPA funds for 10 Hawley Street for a rehabilitation project. This is in first reading, and I know Sarah, I'm going to read this because so many people have spoken to it. Ordered that whereas O'Connell Hawley LLC submitted a CPA application for critical exterior repairs to the former St. John Cantius Church at 10 Hawley Street as part of a larger adaptive reuse project, whereas the building is a contributing resource to the Pomeroy Terrace National Register Historic District, is important to the public for enjoyment and appreciation of the city's architectural, cultural, and historical heritage, and its preservation serves a critical public purpose, whereas all work will conform to the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties and will be in accordance with the recommendations of the Historic Structures Report prepared for the structure under the guidance of a qualified preservation consultant to be retained for the duration of the CPA funded portion of the work. Whereas on August 24th, 2022, the Northampton Community Preservation Committee voted unanimously to recommend that $500,000 in Community Preservation Act funds be used to support this project. Now, therefore, it be ordered that $500,000 be appropriated from the Community Preservation Act Fund to O'Connell Hawley LLC. And the grantee meets the conditions approved by the Community Preservation Committee, the mayor, and the city council. Specifically, $335,737 is appropriated from the CPA Historic Reserve account, and $263 is appropriated from the CPA budgeted reserve account. So I think I've read enough. So Sarah, do you want to speak to this and give us an overview?
Sure. So I can start with an overview of the Community Preservation Committee's deliberations and history with this project, which is very extensive. And then I'd be happy to answer any additional questions about the CPC's process, the CPA in general, or any of the other projects mentioned during public comment. So as you've heard, the CPC received more public comment on this application than it has on any other potential project to date. There was a lot. So O'Connell Hawley's application for rehabilitation and restoration of the former St. John Cantius Church was initially submitted for consideration by the CPC in the spring funding round. That's the second and final round of fiscal year 22. Work proposed to be completed with CPA funding was proposed to be used solely for restoration of the exterior of the structure, and it's not to be involved in any interior work. So the use of the future use of the structure came up, but it's not something that's being funded in any way through the CPA. The committee agreed during that initial deliberation back in the spring that some additional information about the project and the former church building would be helpful both for the applicant and for the committee. So the CPC requested at that time, both that the applicant, one, obtain historical commission support for the application, and two, prepare an historic structures report with the goal of informing future work and demonstrating compliance with the Secretary of the Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties. So the applicant worked with a consultant to obtain that report, which was able to provide some additional assessment and recommendations about the building, and also obtain the support of the Historical Commission early in August. So the CPC took up the application once again last week after extensive discussion, voted unanimously to recommend funding of the application to City Council with the requirements that Councilor Nash just read, that all work conform to the recommendations of the Historic Structures Report, that the historic consultant be retained for the duration of the project, which O'Connell Hawley was amenable to, and also that a permanent historic preservation restriction to be held by the city be placed on the structure. One thing that several of the committee members found really helpful was that an appraisal report provided a value of that historic preservation restriction at $640,000. So that's the difference between the highest and best use of the property and the value of the property with that restriction on it. CPC found that the preservation of the structure and the acquisition of the preservation restriction serves an important public purpose and recommended it for funding to council. The application was submitted as an historic preservation project. That's one of the 4 eligible CPA purposes, in addition to recreation, open space, and affordable housing. 10% of each year's revenue must be set aside for spending on historic preservation projects, as council just discussed and voted earlier. So $335,737 of the CPC's recommended funding for this project will be coming from that historic preservation reserve and would not be available for any other CPA purpose. And this order is being presented now sort of at an in-between time, since it was a carryover from that spring round.
Thank you, Sarah. Councilors, any questions? Councilor Moulton.
Thank you. Sarah, the historic preservation restriction goes with the building, not with the owner. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And can you envision any way that restriction would be no longer in force? What might happen to break that restriction?
So historic preservation restriction is a permanent restriction on a property. It's signed off by the Massachusetts Historical Commission, who is also a party to anything that goes on. I'm not aware of a situation where a historic preservation restriction was taken away from a property. There are sort of mitigating factors sometimes if a building burns down or is severely damaged by a natural disaster or something like that. But this will remain with the parcel moving forward.
So the answer then is, as long as the building stands, the restriction stands.
Correct.
Thank you.
I'm going to go to Councilor Jarrett in a second. It looks like Councilor Foster needs to be a co-host. Laura, can you take care of that?
Yeah.
All right, go ahead, Councilor Jarrett, and we'll be fixing the dilemma for Councilor Foster.
Oh, great. Mine was kind of a follow-up on Councilor Moulton's question. So it's not a 30-year restriction, because that's what we're looking at for the Pine Street restriction, the Florence Congregational Church. So this is a different kind of restriction that is.
No, it is. So this is a different type of restriction. So it's the maximum that a city can deal with absent state approval is 30 years. So that's why the BOMX restriction is structured to be 30 years. Once it's approved by the Massachusetts Historical Commission, or for different purposes, the EOEA for a open space restriction or DHCD for an affordable housing restriction, that allows it to be permanent.
And this restriction would be put into place before the money was received.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Oh, I see Counselor Foster, and she's still muted. Let's see if we can get her on. Oh, good, she's here. Okay.
Something's working. My phone's saving me tonight.
All right.
I noticed that Brian Adams is still here. He had spoken during public comment, and then we're 2 minutes short. But I didn't know if we wanted to recognize him as the chair of the CPA committee, or I could go ahead and make a motion to recognize Brian Adams in case that's helpful.
Okay. So a motion to recognize Brian Adams has been made by Counselor Foster. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Moulton. Any discussion on recognizing Mr. Adams? Hearing none. Laura, roll call, please.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Moulton,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
and Counselor Gore.
Yes.
Okay. Brian, you may not have wanted to speak, but you have been recognized, and you can join this conversation if you wish. Oh, let's see if we can get him unmuted.
There we go. Great. I appreciate the council vote. Once again, this was perhaps one of the most difficult deliberations of the Community Preservation Committee. I think I may have misspoken earlier and called myself chair of the Historic Commission when I'm chair of the Community Preservation Commission. So Community Preservation Committee, I apologize about that. But again, I just want to reiterate that this is not, in our minds, setting a precedent about anything. Nor would it be setting a precedent if we voted against it because it was in the private domain and then would never look at another private project again. We were convinced that historic preservation is a public good, has been reiterated, that is respectful of the Polish heritage in the area, that O'Connell had looked at other options and there, no other viable economic options came forward with this. And again, all of the restrictions that we put in place and having a historic structures report and a qualified historic preservation consultant on staff, and the fact that it's so meaningful to so many people, not just in the neighborhood around Holy Street, but in the city as a whole. And again, it's not letting the perfect get in the way of the good. So I appreciate the council's vote on this. And I know there'll be a second vote as well. Is that correct?
Tonight is introduction, and we will decide whether it's a financial order, whether to put it on the consent agenda or to send it to our finance committee to possibly seek further input and further deliberation.
Great. And the only other thing I'd comment on is I think our process has been very transparent. I think we've really allowed public comment above and beyond what we usually do, having public comment twice verbally and then once with all the letters that we received, that we've really done our due diligence. And I look forward to the vote in the upcoming weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilors, Counselor Jarrett.
Yeah, we heard in public comment about how funding for Look Park was rejected, and I wondered if Sarah or anyone was familiar with that and could speak to that application.
Yeah, so that one, just pull something. So the Look Park Fountain was not recommended for funding during the fall 2014 CPA round. And at that point, the committee considered the high cost of the project. With 300,000 in CPA funds was requested, and a total project cost of 550,000. So that was a factor not in funding, as well as concern about non-original components and design elements as a historic preservation project.
So it wasn't because of Look Park was a private entity. But are they a private nonprofit? Is that, I'm not sure is that correct? But it wasn't because of their private versus status.
It was not, no.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Counselor Gore and then Counselor Elkins.
So I'm just wondering, does the historic preservation come with the CPA funds? Is that like together?
Are you asking about the requirement to use some of the funding for CPA on
right? If they get the CPA funds, like, are those two inseparable? Like, they get the funds and they have to keep it preserved, or if they don't get the funds, do they still have to keep it historically preserved?
So what the historic preservation restriction will do will be to provide city review of any major work going forward, and also require them to keep the property maintained and in good condition. So it's not directly tied to the CPA funding, but is a result of it. So the requirement of the CPA funding to place this historic preservation restriction on the building will then provide some additional historic preservation moving forward.
And to clarify, so the restriction is not imposed, it's accepted by the property owner in exchange for having the designation. And in this case, it essentially impacts the value of the property of about $640,000, correct?
It does, yes.
Negatively.
So the CPC felt that this was critically important to protect the public investment. They wouldn't have felt comfortable making this recommendation without this additional requirement for a historic preservation restriction. It's not strictly required by the CPA law. It's not necessary to do that. But the CPC felt it was very important. Okay. As did the Historical Commission.
So if they don't get CPA funds, will they still have to preserve the historic aspects of the building?
No, they will not.
Okay, next is Counselor Elkins.
So I'm recalling that a while back we approved CPA funds for the facade on the Mickelson Gallery, the building on Main Street. So that strikes me as an example of where a private property owner was allowed CPA funds. Can you remind me, or can you tell us what happened with that project? And
Sure. So CPC recommended and council subsequently approved.
Sorry, I keep saying CPA. Sorry.
I do too. So the CPC recommended and then council subsequently approved about $82,000 for restoration work to the facade of the Mickelson Galleries, the former First National Bank on Main Street. And that also carried a requirement for this perpetual historic preservation restriction. The Mickelson Galleries really couldn't justify making that commitment perpetually in exchange for receipt of the CPA funding, so they ended up returning the money and pursued funding privately.
So sorry, just to follow up on that. So to be clear, it was specifically they didn't want to be tied down with the historic preservation restriction and everything that came with it. So
Yeah,
so they
and
committed themselves to basically in the short term or the medium, the near long term, to doing that facade according to what it looks like, but there's nothing holding that building to continuing to uphold those historic elements.
And nothing perpetual. I mean, it's in the central business architecture district. So that does carry some level of review, but that's certainly not permanent and can change. Those borders have already shifted fairly recently.
And to be clear, if they had accepted the CPC funds, they would have had to have committed themselves to like in perpetuity.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
So with projects that carry this requirement for a permanent restriction, we make sure that that's in place before any funds are awarded. Or actually given out.
Like they're contingent.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Councillor Moulton, then Councillor Jarrett.
Thank you. I want to focus on the 335,737 that's coming from the historic reserve, which can only be used for preservation. And that's about 2/3 of the total $500,000 request. What, Sarah, what do you know at this point, based on the preliminary applications about other preservation projects that may be seeking CPA money this round?
I know Historic Northampton is looking at a very small project for preservation of some of their artifacts, so that's coming in under the small grant program, so it's no more than $3,000. Smith Charities may potentially be looking at another application for work to the building at 51 Main Street. Northampton Community Music Center will likely be applying for some funding. And the DAR house may be considering some wiring upgrades, which would also be a fairly small request.
Oh, so none would be as large as this one at this point, as far as you know.
No, I wouldn't anticipate that.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Jarrett is next, and then I saw Councillor Maori. So, Councillor Jarrett.
Yeah, going back to the funding we did for the Michelson Gallery, I recall there was a stipulation in there that the funds would be repaid if the building was sold within a certain amount of time. Maybe it was 5 years? Is there any, so say if this goes forward, they build out, then they decide to sell the building and sort of sell it as condos or do something different. Would there be any provision for repaying funds, and they make a profit on it because things have gone up or something, and it doesn't turn out that 640,000 loss was true? Is there any provision in this to have funds repaid if the building is sold?
That did not come up in the CPC's deliberations of this project. Michelson was a little bit different because that was a building that was owned by the same property owner for a number of years. So the committee had different concerns and thoughts about that project, but that didn't come up in discussions about the former church.
Okay. And the second question I had was about the State Historic Rehabilitation Tax Credit Program. I've gotten inquiries that this could be another way that they could receive funding. Do you know about this program, and would that be a likely candidate for them getting assistance?
I mean, the applicant did indicate that was something they'd looked into, because the interior of the building is proposed to be divided. That would likely preclude the use of historic tax credit funding.
So that funding generally likes to see the entire building, be interior and exterior, be preserved.
Yeah, and the historic tax credit programs have a little bit different standards than just general Secretary of the Interior standards. But the applicant did indicate that was something that wasn't feasible for the work that they were proposing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to interject here because I'm familiar with the group that was working with the Friends of St. John's, that there was a push to get the historic tax credits. And the thing is that, yeah, if you alter the interior of the structure, so just putting up walls to create units of housing, that basically says that you're no longer can get those credits. So you would really need to keep the exterior and interior just as it is. So and so therefore in this case that's why that's not part of the equation. Just one. I think Councilor Maori was next.
I had my hand up.
Oh. Well, let me do Councilor Maori and then Councilor Labarge. You're also little here. It's hard to see.
I am very little.
So Councilor Maori, then Councilor Labarge.
Yeah, so I'm curious about the $500,000 amount. So is that the amount determined that, some threshold of preservation would be needed? Did the commission discuss just providing the $335,000 and change? I guess I'm wondering about that amount. I mean, is that kind of completely covering? And what would happen if you had given a lower amount and that sort of thing?
Sure. So the committee did ask in this instance, as they do in almost every instance, if partial funding would be a possibility. And the applicant indicated that no, this $500,000 was really the critical amount that was necessary to make the project work for them and to allow them to save the structure. They actually came in with a larger request initially, and then reduced it. And I'd have to look to figure out what the initial application amount was, but it was more than that. So they'd already reduced it to what they said was just the minimum necessary.
Okay. And I had a follow-up question. Well, I guess I'm wondering about the historic preservation. When you were saying your mission, I was thinking, does it say private versus public? And I was curious about how often with historic preservation it is private, that ratio of private versus public in the history of the CPC.
It's definitely been primarily public or nonprofit buildings. The Michelson Galleries on Main Street was recommended for funding. A number of nonprofit buildings, also with potentially limited public access, such as the Smith Charities building. Again, that work was for the exterior of the structure. But the committee absolutely reviews everything on its own merits, and as Brian noted, didn't feel that this would be precedent setting, since every application is different, it has a slightly different public purpose.
Right.
And they're
that's
all
not the main, the private versus public isn't the paradigm that you are all thinking, and it's really more about the value of the project.
I mean, under the anti-aid amendment to the state constitution, the committee has to be confident that this isn't providing financial benefit to a private entity. But since this was really just allowing for the structure to be saved and retained, that was the overriding public purpose.
Thank you, Sarah.
Okay, Councilor Labarge.
Thank you.
You're up. I'm sorry.
Anyways, I want to thank Councilor Jarrett. I thought that question was on my mind, and I had great concerns about that. And it was explained by Sarah LaValle about the difference in Councilor Nash. But I still have concerns about the $500,000, which I just heard again from Councilor Maori. I have to say, as a city councilor, my phones today, 10 after 6, was the last call I got about that $500,000. And it's just been nonstop all week over this. And what I want to know, Sarah, is here they have gotten a loan to go ahead and buy the property. What bothers me is the city also was shot down for buying that for a good cause that we needed here in the city. And then all of a sudden they build all these condos, high price condos, and they're coming in to ask for $500,000. I feel that there must be another way, and you're saying to all of us counselors, well, the price was higher. How much higher was that price that they had stated? To me, I think that's valuable to know that, seeing that they're asking for 500 and you just stated that the price was higher. How much higher?
So I was able to find that the initial application amount was for $830,000.
And they couldn't find any other way of getting this 500,000?
That's what was presented in the application that the CPC reviewed. And it also came up during public comment and in the committee's deliberation that there is currently a pending application in front of the Central Business Architecture Committee to demolish the structure completely. So the committee did also factor in, there is a very real plan to demolish this building. And this was what the applicant identified as a potential way not to do that.
And I have to say, I have to agree with Councilor Jarrett. I remember how many people were so upset about the fountain at Look Park. And we're hearing a lower price at Look Park versus what we're hearing here from somebody from the outside. And here we have a park in the city of Northampton. I don't know. I can see where people in the city right now are very upset about what is occurring here and how we are giving contractors money from out of town for a purpose in themselves. And this is what people are saying, to make big, full pockets on taxpayers' money with the CPA. And you've probably been hearing that yourself. So I'm uncomfortable with this. I really am. And I really appreciate you explaining everything you are. And I'm hoping a lot of people hear this tonight. But I think I cannot vote on this tonight. What I am suggesting, because I really think that we need to have the opportunity to let the public be involved, not just vote on this tonight to say, yes, we approve it. There's, I think, more questions to be asked, Sarah. So I would like to make a motion that we refer this order to Finance Committee. I really think it's in dire need.
Second.
Okay, motion to refer to Finance has been made by Councilor Labarge and seconded by Councilor Moulton. Any discussion on that referral? Councilor Jarrett, and then Councilor Miori, and then I've got something to say.
Okay. If we vote to refer, can we still we can still discuss after that vote happens?
Sure. What my recommendation is, let's continue the discussion now as part of the referral. I see what you're saying, Councilor Jarrett. So right now the discussion should be just to the referral.
Until we vote, but I just have a few more questions. But I thought, well, I'm fine with the referral. I agree with that. But we can vote to refer, and then we can continue to ask questions.
So in my view, we can continue to ask questions as part of, that in terms of whether our consideration in relative to referral. And,
Okay.
but you can ask whatever you want.
Right.
So,
Yes.
so the motion's on the
Okay,
floor,
well, I'll
but
let-
we can still have a freewheeling conversation. Go right ahead.
Okay, sounds good. I'll let the other folks go first in case it's more directly related to referral.
Okay, so I saw Counselor Maori, but now Counselor Elkins. Can I go to Counselor Elkins here? Because
Sure.
Yeah.
she hasn't spoken yet, and then we'll go back to Counselor Maori.
I was just going to suggest that we add to it a referral to community resources. I think historic preservation issues, especially when we're sort of looping in and considering the issue of a private, the funds going to a private property owner, might make community resources an appropriate place to also talk about it. I would also, though, let Councilor Perry chime in there if he thinks that's a ridiculous idea as chair of the community resources. I mean, anybody else can also pipe in to say it's ridiculous, but he in particular as chair of community resources.
So Counselor Elkins, it sounds like you're making a friendly addition to the referral to send it to community resources pending the chair of community resources weighing in and saying whether or not he thinks that's a good idea.
I would call it a friendly amendment, sure.
Well, then I would chime in and say that I think that it is an appropriate place to send such a discussion. It is a community issue, so I am all aboard in tacking that on to sending it to financial matters.
And the counselors who made the motion, you're okay with this friendly addition?
I'm fine.
Yes.
Okay, so now we have that as part of our discussion. So I've been very much involved in this particular initiative for quite a while now. And it initially started, I'm thinking it was around 2012, 2013. And I was sitting in a meeting next to Owen Freeman Daniels, and that Carolyn Mish was making a presentation on expanding central business to include this property for St. John Cantius, that the building was due to go on the market, and that it was a action taken by the city with the idea that by expanding the uses, because prior to that it had been in URB, by expanding it to central business, now it could invite other ideas such as restaurants. Who knows, maybe a hotel could go in there somewhere, but it invited all of those downtown uses that are not allowed in URC. And frankly, I was sitting in that meeting and I was like, big whoop. I was like, this is a church that, all right, it's going away. That was kind of the last of it until I believe it was 2018 when O'Connell Development Group bought the building and then did a community meeting to talk about their plans to develop that property. And I really beg to differ that if O'Connell Development Group does not think, I expect they have a dartboard of me down there, because in that meeting, I'm the one who I stood up and said, that we're supportive of this group. There was 30, 40 people in the room. We're supportive of you guys moving forward with your project, but you need to make efforts to preserve this church. Many of the people in that room had been part of that parish, and they wanted to see the church preserved. And I also wanted to underline that it's not just these people here, it's the city has made it, they see that the city sees this as a structure of value to the point that we've reconfigured central business to include it, so you guys can figure out a way to save it. And I went to the planning board and said that when they made their proposal for their condos, and that I see Matt is on the screen here, Mr. Matt Welter. We converse in very friendly ways, but I think I've been a bit of a pain for Mr. Welter over the last 4 to 5 years, and that that there's this group, Friends of St. John's, that have been they're members of the Polish community, members of some residents in Ward 3. And also just people interested in preserving architecture in our city. And they've made a case over and over again that I want to thank Central Business Architecture for putting the demolition on hold. There was multiple meetings. I'm thinking there was like 5 or 6 of them, and lots of people in attendance. And they, that by putting that demolition order on hold, that's how it started to work over to this here, where O'Connell Development Group considered, taking this different route of preserving the church. And they even presented to the historic, if you want to see what's going to go there, if they tear down the church, I'm sure it's on record somewhere. We can get that, where the proposed condos, we can see what the difference is going to be. And that, and so what's on the table here is, do we want those brand new looking condos, or do we want this structure preserved? It is a high price. And that's what's on the table. And the last thing I want to say here is that that there's a party in the room here we're not talking about, and that they have had a huge bearing on how we're landing here right now. That the former property owner, the Diocese of Springfield, didn't take care of this building.
That's right.
It's in terrible shape. Yes, the tower's still standing, and there's a slate roof, but it's very much in need of repair. It's deteriorating, and so much so, to underline this, that yes, the city made the case for the resilience hub to go here, where the city said, we're going to pay $550,000, with the thought that we knew we had another $1 million in reserve, because we'd set aside that money from our cannabis mitigation fees to build out the resilience hub. The city's estimate of rehabbing the building and O'Connell's are kind of the same. There's another $1 million worth of work just to take the envelope of this building to make it so whatever goes inside is usable. And beyond the fact that the structure was poorly cared for, it's been sent forward to all of us with a deed restriction. And the deed restriction says, and it's really worth hearing it, because you're not going to hear it when we talk about Bombyx. Where are you, Mr. Deed Restriction? It is right. No. I found it. Okay. This is from the deed restriction that O'Connell has signed with the diocese. Subject to a restriction running with the land, providing that in no event shall the premises be put to any use that is inconsistent with the teachings of the Roman Catholic Church as determined in the sole discretion of the Roman Catholic Bishop of Springfield, except as prohibited by Massachusetts law. So what this is saying is that all of those ideas that anybody ever had to have an art space, to have music there, to have events there, were all given this poison pill. And to the point that there was a point 5, 6, 7 years ago that the Arts Trust, it's now at 33 Hawley Street, they first approached the diocese about this building. And it was this deed restriction language that made it a non-starter. But the Arts Trust was ready. They were super interested in that property, and they were reluctant to end up where they are. And by the way, they're super happy there, and we are really happy there as well. But it's all to say that poor maintenance and this poison pill of use is what's driven us to this point where one of the allowed uses is multifamily dwellings. That's on the list here. And that is what the O'Connell is offering us. It's a multifamily dwelling. We're looking for a historic preservation restriction. And yes, it's a lot of money. And I'm going to say that, yeah, this is not a win-win. We're going to take up something in a few minutes that's a complete win-win. We have a faith community, 2 faith communities lining up with an arts program that's working with the city. They are not, that, and we're going to discuss that. But that's not going on here. There's lots of muddy water. And ultimately it's about, with this muddy water, do we want to preserve this structure? And I lean towards preserving it. And that, but I understand all of the discomfort that people in the community feel. I really appreciate that the CPC, they were feeling it too. And that this is one of those cases where it's not perfect. But we have a way to preserve a historic structure. So I went long. I took my.
Yes, you did.
But all right, who's next?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Marianne.
I don't want you to say, well, geez, you're so small, I can't find you. But anyways, I'm here, and I'm glad you mentioned, Counselor, about the diocese anyways, because even tonight we were talking about this situation, about the church in general. And it's not the feelings of people that they don't care about the church. They do care about the church and always have. It's right there in Springfield where it was all cost from. And right now we have a problem. And there's be another problem coming in, which is St. Mary's Church. Are we going to run into that same problem with that? It won't be somebody from our city who's going to buy it, because it's just been sitting there because of the diocese doing what they did and not taking care of their churches. That I agree. It's a big problem. So we're going to have to look down the path again. Another private agency contractors, full pockets, are going to come in, and then they're going to come to us for CPA money. Watch it happen. Guarantee you it will happen. So I thank you for bringing that up, because that has been talked about, of where that fault all became. And I agree with that, Councilor Nash. Thank you on that.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay. Councilor Jarrett, and then Councilor Elkins.
Thank you. So I was reviewing the application, and I saw that they talk about that this is for rental housing. They're not proposing to make this into condos, though I imagine that could happen in the future. And the estimated rental cost is between $1,800 and $1,900 a month. I'm not sure if Sarah, do you know if they're proposing, these 1 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms or a mix or more? Do you have any information about what they're proposing to put in there? I looked at the plans, but I wasn't quite sure how to read them.
I don't have that readily available. What I can tell you is that the applicant indicated that one of the units would be completely ADA accessible.
Mhm. If you do the math as far as what's considered affordable, if you sort of do that backwards from $1,900 a month, that comes out to a yearly income of $76,000. I am not sure where that fits in our, because we have an area median income and amount that would then be affordable for. My guess is though that it would be considered what we call like workforce housing or middle, missing middle housing, and that's something that we as a city want to promote. In my understanding, that sort of amounts that are less, rather that are more than what's considered technically affordable housing, but less than what a lot of things are going for. And so creating more of this housing sounds like could be a possibility, but I would be concerned that there's nothing actually holding them to renting that. They're probably going to rent it for as much as they can. And depending on the market, I don't know what that's going to be. So I wonder if there is a way to hold them to put something in that would hold them to a certain amount, increasing with inflation or something like that. I haven't, I don't know how feasible any of that is, but I'm curious about that. So not to make it legally affordable housing, but to make it somewhere in the middle and be preserved as that. So that's a question that maybe I can talk to other folks in the city about, and we can discuss at finance or community resources going forward.
Okay. Was there somebody after? I see Councilor Labarge was it Councilor Elkins, then Councilor Labarge?
Yes, she had her
Yeah.
hand up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Councilor Nash for your comments and sort of recap of sort of the history of that. I do have to say that like in terms of how we use CPC money and how the fact of the matter is these the vacant churches, and particularly from the Roman Catholic Church, and I say this without any whatever feelings about it one way or the other, but if you look at any catalog or any listings of commercial property real estate listings across this whole Commonwealth and New England, the fact of the matter is that these properties, these vacant churches, are a yoke around the neck of the communities that they're in. They've been left derelict, they've been left unattended to, they've been left with these kinds of restrictive deed restrictions that have, and that really, I mean, the point that you made about the deed restrictions is tremendous in terms of what it means, because it's not just about whether or not we can put a resilience hub, it's not about whether or not we can just put an arts cultural center. It does matter that a private developer can, whether or not they can come in and what they can do with it. And the sentiments of the community and the communities of faith that worshiped there, that were married and did their funerals there, and that did their all of their religious rites of passage at these places, that they were just sort of tossed to the winds as these buildings were just left vacant and derelict. And it is also worth mentioning, I think there's a statistic that maybe Northampton has, in terms of New England, like the highest number of churches per capita and church buildings per capita. I'm kind of talking off the fly there, but I really do think we have a concentration of religious buildings, of church buildings. And so we really do need to be thoughtful about what we do here and be considerate and conscientious and thoughtful about the people of faith who grew up in these buildings, and also our need for housing, our need at every strata of the market, and what we and what we do and what it means to have like these prime real estate areas in our downtowns when we're thinking about urban and density infill housing, to have these locations essentially off the market, essentially just not available for housing of any kind. Put aside whether or not they're affordable housing, but whether or not they are available for any kind of housing. And so I'm very interested in this conversation. I'm going to be very interested in what we have to say and what we hear from the community and from the developers and everybody regarding how we go forward, because while I don't think it's precedent setting to have a private a private developer or private business owner use CPC funds in this way, like that's not precedent setting. But what could be is how we think about these vacant churches, because this is not the only one in the city, and it's not the only difficult property in the city of this nature. And so that really will matter, what we do with it and how we think about it, and how we listen to what our community has to say. So thank you, Councilor Nash. I thought your remarks were very thoughtful.
Thank you. Councilor Labarge, I think you had your hand up. Are you muted? Yes.
Okay. I want to thank Councilor Jarrett again, because we hear so much about affordable housing, and at $1,800, $1,900 a month is a lot of money, And he's correct. You're looking at an average of over $70,000 a year. That's not going to help the need of our families here in the city to get that apartment, a 1-bedroom or whatever. It's a lot of money. I don't call that affordable, and I don't think that the developer would call that affordable in our city of Northampton when we're so short of housing. So thank you again, Councilor Jarrett, because to me that was very valuable.
Councilor Perry.
That's me. I just want to thank all the councilors for their questions and their input, and also want to thank everybody who was working on this from the Historical Commission to everyone involved. This is obviously not something that has come in front of us overnight. As Councilor Nash said, there's a history behind this, and there's not only a history between the building, but also a community history. And I'm thankful that we are having a thoughtful conversation, and we're going to move this to different subcommittees, because I believe that the community does need to have a little more input, and I also need to do a little more research and learn about what is going on. I'm very interested to know whether or not O'Connell has exhausted all of the funding. We haven't asked about it, but I have not heard anything concrete of what they did, what kind of fundraising, what avenues, other than some historic tax credit stuff. So, for me, I look forward to picking apart exactly how we got to this place. And to Councilor Jarrett's point, we are in desperate need of workforce housing. People talk all the time about Northampton being arts and entertainment city, that we're known for our restaurants and our music and our arts, but we are honestly unaffordable for anyone who is an artist or someone who is working in restaurants. I've spent most of my adult life working in restaurants in downtown Northampton. I am lucky to be renting from a landowner who has not raised my rent, but I don't think I could ever afford $1,800, $1,900 to live in Northampton and still provide the services. I love the service industry. I love being an artist and an entertainer. So I think that we really have to look at not just housing for our families and people coming, but the people who do provide the services that we have come to love. Because otherwise, everything is connected. There's a reason why we have so many marijuana dispensaries and the restaurants are hurting. It's really hard to live here and work in Northampton. And so you have people coming from Holyoke and other cities. So, I think that should be part of the conversation. And thank you, Alex, for bringing that up.
Counselor Elkins.
I'm sorry, I want to address one more thing, just briefly based from the public comments, which is, it was suggested that this is before us and that this was rushed to a vote or something like that. I just want to make it clear to anybody who's here and that's interested in this particular issue. We are not voting tonight. It's in first reading. We are discussing, and then it's going to be referred to committees for further discussion and further public input and further questions. And we will not be voting until the next time it appears on our agenda. So there's going to be a couple more opportunities for public input. So I meant to say when I first commented, I wanted to thank the members of the CPC for their work for what sounds like a lengthy meeting, more along the lines of what we experienced, and their work and thoughtful consideration of this apparently across a few meetings, and then just reassure people who are interested in this meeting, in this issue, that we're, to some degree, maybe we're hearing this for the first time, or maybe we're going to go back and review the CPC meetings for how those went in the past and the comments and the presentations that were made at those things, but that we are just beginning our deliberations. So I just wanted to reinforce to folks who are concerned and are here and who have been writing us that we are beginning our thought process on this, and it is not a rush to a vote. And there's going to be more opportunities to hear from folks. So.
Thank you, Councillor Elkins. And I can provide a little more clarity to that. For the meeting on the 15th, that I won't be there. Also, Sarah LaValle won't be there as well, and that means that the next meeting, and we're both in agreement that it also looks like Finance will be taking this up, and Finance will be meeting on the 21st, I believe. And if it goes to Community Resources, this all adds up. The soonest it could get back to council would be October 6th. And so there's going to be a month for people to investigate, be part of these discussions. And we're to underline what Councillor Elkins was saying, that, we're in hearing and deliberating mode. So. All right, so we have any more discussion? Wow, okay, cool. Seeing none, that we have a motion on the table to refer this to both the Finance Committee and Community Resources. No more discussion. Laura, roll call please on referral to Finance and Community Resources.
Councillor Labarge.
Yes.
There we go. Yep.
Councillor Maori.
Yes.
Councillor Moulton.
Yes.
Councillor Nash.
Yes.
Councillor Perry.
Yes.
Councillor Elkins.
Yes.
Councillor Foster.
Yes.
Councillor Gore.
Yes.
And Councillor Jarrett.
Yes.
Okay, that item has been referred to Community Resources and to Finance Committee. These are committees. The public is welcome to show up and speak to any items that are on the agenda there. And so people are encouraged to do that. I think I need
Councillor Nash.
Yes.
When is this coming to Finance?
So I've been in discussions with the Finance Chair, Councillor Maori, and it looks like, so the Finance meeting for next Wednesday was canceled to accommodate a number of the councilors so they could get to that post-agreement meeting. And that meant that the next scheduled meeting would be the 21st.
Yep,
So
that was scheduled anyways.
I'm sorry?
that meeting was still scheduled on the 21st.
Right, so
Let's
just
say that way.
by having them all scheduled that way, we can just move it back to the next meeting.
Right to the 21st, okay.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, was there another question?
I was gonna ask for a break.
I was gonna just say that. I need a 5-minute break. So let's all come back together at 9:44. chit chatting here. Okay. We did that. Okay. Now we are up to financial orders on second reading. And look at this.
What?
It's a local preservation restriction. Okay, 22.151, an order authorizing acceptance of a local preservation restriction for 130 Pine Street in Florence. This is up for second reading, and it is also, let's see, we have something later in the agenda related to the zoning change. You know what, but I guess maybe we could move that up to discuss it at the same time.
I think that's
Sarah, do you think that's appropriate to have them? Let me see, where is it here? Yeah, so you know what, counselors, so I'm going to put both of these on the floor because I think they're both related. And so there's also order 20, this is zoning ordinance 22.110, an ordinance to rezone 130 Pine Street from URB to office industrial. This is also in second reading. And we've spent a lot of time, just the history list here points to all of the public discussion that has gone on here. There's been less discussion around this preservation restriction, but it's all part of the same thing. And I think Sarah, you want to try talking about all of this? I know Carolyn's not here tonight. Maybe Sarah's still on the break. She's probably hearing her name and running across her house to get to the screen. And there, she was devouring some dinner.
That's exactly what I did. Like, I hear them talking about me. I better go.
So, welcome back. So, yeah, we have on the floor both the preservation restriction and the zoning change, because they're kind of tied together, correct?
They are, definitely.
Okay, so why don't we talk about the preservation restriction real quick here? Come on, boot me out. Oh. Here it is. Okay, upon the recommendation of the Planning Board and the Office of Planning and Sustainability, an order authorizing acceptance of a local preservation restriction for 130 Pine Street in Florence, whereas the Florence Congregational Church located at 130 Pine Street has a rich architectural and human history and is a contributing structure to a planned Florence National Register Historic District, whereas continued and expanded use of the property consistent with Sustainable Northampton Plan will preserve the historic building and create additional reuse potential within walking distance of neighborhoods in downtown Florence, whereas that as part of expanded reuse of the property, the church has agreed to enter into a development agreement with the city, whereas the development agreement provides for protection of the historical and architectural integrity of the property through a preservation restriction on the exterior of the building. And then the rest is kind of what we're going to order. So, what do you got to say, Sarah?
So this preservation restriction, as we noted during the discussion of the CPA recommendation, it is not a permanent preservation restriction. This is a local historic preservation restriction only. Mass Historic is not involved, but the 30 years is appropriate for what's going on here. So this will allow the city to have some additional level of review over the exterior changes at the church. This is a really important historic structure. Will definitely be included in the Florence Abolition National Register District, which is underway. And will also allow for some adaptive reuse possibilities at the church.
Okay. And I spoke with Carolyn on the phone earlier today, and she clarified there is a relationship here. So one of the things that's going on is the transfer of the ownership of the building to the Bombyx organization. And that there's also this development agreement that within it, the city is seeking the historic preservation restriction because for office industrial, there is no what I'll call design standards. There's nothing that would protect the church if all of these reuses are allowed. But by having, that changing the zoning and putting the restriction in place preserves the church, and also, but allows, with this development agreement, allows all of those uses that Bombyx is looking to do. Did I summarize it pretty good?
You did well.
Okay.
Sounds good.
I just want to add some other things to this, that there is no deed restriction going on here. I had a discussion with Cassandra today, and that both faith communities, they are working together, and that they work to be respectful of whatever performances they're putting on, and they recognize that the space is sacred space. But at the same time, neither faith communities, there's two faith communities sharing the same space, and they're inclusive. And this is great. And that, and they are not imposing any restrictions along with the Bombyx purchase of the property. Just wanted to make note of that. All right, any further discussion on this item here? Hearing none, this is up for second reading. I'll accept the motion to approve this.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Labarge. Did Councilor Perry do a second there? He did. And yeah, he beat Councilor Jarrett by a smidgen. Okay, and so, all right. Any more discussion on this preservation restriction? Hearing none, I see councilors want to vote. Laura, roll call, please.
Councilor Labarge.
Yes.
Councilor Maori. Yes. Councilor Moulton.
Yes.
Councilor Nash.
Yes.
Councilor Perry.
Yes.
Councilor Elkins.
I see her.
Elkins? Okay.
I wonder if we can do thumbs up, thumbs down.
Okay. I can come.
We'll come back to it. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Foster.
Yes.
Councilor Gore.
Yes.
Councilor Jarrett.
Yes.
And a final try for Councilor Elkins. Okay, maybe she's just.
Maybe her earbuds died.
I can't see her or hear her, so. But
He's there.
Is she gesturing affirmatively?
Yes.
She's nodding a little.
I will consider that a yes.
Can you give us a thumbs up? Yeah, there we go. All right. Yes. But she's saying something.
We can't hear you, honey. Losing my mind.
It's yes or no. You can't qualify it. All right. All right. Next. All right. So we put on the floor 22.110, an ordinance to rezone 130 Pine Street from URB to office industrial. Let's see.
Right.
Is there anything I think we've been through this enough, and there's a map, and, so I'll consider a motion to approve this in second reading.
Move to approve?
Second it.
Motion made by Counselor Jarrett, seconded by Counselor Labarge, to approve the ordinance to rezone 130 Pine Street. Any discussion? Counselor Jarrett.
So the last time we postponed pending receipt of subordination agreement. And I just wanted to confirm that that has been received. There was a mortgage that was put on that needed to be subordinated to the historic preservation restriction, I believe.
And Laura?
Yes, we had confirmation that that was received.
Great.
Okay. Great question. Any further discussion, questions? Okay. Seeing no further discussion, Laura, roll call, please.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Moulton,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Elkins.
2 thumbs up.
Okay. Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
and Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
Okay, that passes. And we just okayed the rezoning of 130 Pine Street. And I think Cassandra, who I spoke to earlier today, is very happy right at this moment. Next up, all right, we're going to go back to following the order of things here. We have ordinances that are not yet referred. We have an ordinance relative to parking on New South Street. I'm going to run through them because we might want to move them as a group. An ordinance relative to parking on State Street and an ordinance relative to fire lanes. Is that it? I think section exemptions. Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I'd propose to move them as a group for referral to legislative matters.
I'll second that.
Okay. And these, just to be clear, these came out of the TPC. Is that correct, Laura?
That's correct.
Yes.
And Counselor Gore or Counselor Foster, is there anything you want to add to this? Do you think they need to go anywhere else, or?
I don't think they need to go anywhere else.
Okay.
Neither.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor made by Counselor Jarrett. Who seconded it?
I did.
Seconded by Counselor Labarge. Any more discussion on referring this to legislative matters? Hearing none. Laura, roll calls, please.
Counselor Moulton,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Elkins. With those with a visual, are you able to see an
Yes.
affirmative
Yes.
response? Okay.
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
and Counselor Maori.
Yes.
Okay. Those 3 items relative to parking have been referred to legislative matters. We have one more item. Also, Laura, can you just make note that when Counselor Elkins is giving us a thumbs up, that it's a visual vote? We might want to check in with Attorney Seawald.
Can you make Counselor Elkins a co-host as well? She left and came back.
You know what? I show her as being unmuted, so, okay, but I certainly will. Okay.
Is that what she was making all those motions about?
I assumed it was her earbuds dying, but I don't know. Got the rechargeable earbuds at sometimes.
Huh, and now I.
Counselor Elkins, there's no way you can speak to us?
This is really sad.
Not now.
Yay!
Oh, there she is. All right. Okay, good.
She persisted.
All right, good. All right, I'm comfortable moving forward now. All right, let's see. We have Next item, 22.168, an ordinance amending section 272-18C exemptions. And I believe Councilor Maori could just give us a quick reasoning for this. This has to do with the plastic reduction, correct?
Yeah, Councilor Nash?
Yes.
I will need to recuse myself from this one. There's a possible conflict of interest with my business, Pedal People Cooperative. So,
thank you. And it's just one word. But thank you, Alex. All right. Yeah, Councilor Maori.
Right. So as you recall, we delayed the implementation of the plastics reduction ordinance in July, and so now we're here looking to make sure that we can implement it by the end of October. Is that it? Wait, is that correct, Councilor Nash? And so I've been working with Director LaScalia on reviewing the ordinance to see what would kind of feel doable and practical. And it's really interesting when you're not an elected official. Sometimes you find really simple ways to do things, like cross out a word where I might have made a giant long sentence. In any case, this is what Director LaScalia came up with, and I reviewed, and I talked to the Elijah Pakal from the Youth Commission, and I checked in with Alan Wolf, Chief of Staff. So everyone is on board with this. It really just gives the director, if you recall, who is going to be the enforcing agent, a little bit more latitude, because we've heard about supply chain issues and compliance issues. So this was an elegant solution with that. There was also a simple solution.
Cool.
And I'm happy to answer any questions about that.
Well, I think that that this looks like it's almost like, I mean, we need to do this because it's in the ordinance, but it's almost like a very small change, but I do think it needs to go to legislative matters.
True.
So I'll entertain a motion.
Move to legislative matters.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Maori, seconded by Councilor Moulton. Any discussion on referral? I just want to say thank you to Councilor Maori for continuing to refine this. Thank you.
And thank you to Director LaScalia for elegance and simplicity that I don't know that municipal government always has. So.
Okay, roll call, Laura, for referral to legislative matters.
Councilor Nash,
Yes.
Councilor Perry,
Yes.
Councilor Elkins,
Yes.
Councilor Foster,
Yes.
Councilor Gore,
Yes.
Councilor Jarrett.
Oh, he's recused.
Yeah, he's recusing.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Councilor Labarge,
Yes.
Councilor Maori,
Yes.
and Councilor Moulton.
Yes.
Okay, that has been referred to legislative matters. Next on our agenda is another zoning related item. It has to do with that overlay for Cook Avenue and for Bridge Road. And that was another, Laura, that was another situation where we were still waiting on some paperwork that just came in.
Right, we were just waiting for the approval from the Department of Housing and Community Development, and Carolyn said she did get that yesterday.
Okay, so we can now move forward with approving this. I'll entertain them. Well, any discussion?
I'll move to approve.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Moulton, seconded by Councilor Labarge to approve this. Any discussion? Mayor, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to make sure you knew that DHCD had signed off, so.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, hearing none, no further discussion. Laura, roll call, please.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Moulton,
Yes.
and Counselor Nash.
Yes. Okay. That item, an ordinance to amend the zoning map on Bridge Road and Cook Avenue has been approved in second reading. So that, Laura, I'm not missing anything. That's bringing us down to our new business discussion, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And that, so we have an item here that I placed on the agenda, discussion of cannabis regulations. And I want to explain to everybody, now that I can explain it, why I put it there, that, so I know that we've all been getting a lot of public interest in, a lot of concern about a cannabis dispensary in Florence, a lot of concern about dispensaries in general, a request for caps. There's been concerns about host agreement meetings, and that I wanted us to have a discussion where we could talk about how we want to tackle some of this. I think that council and our committees can do some work here, and that and I also wanted to take, just have a moment to set the record straight on a number of things. I know that there was a misunderstanding by some folks out at the host agreement meeting out in Florence a few weeks back, that some people, and I think it was put out by the applicant, that council approved cannabis, in Florence as recently as April. And I want to clarify that actually that went back to 2018. And that with the new form-based code, I can understand how people got there. If you go online and you look at our zoning for Florence Center, anywhere that the form-based codes apply, that they've been uploaded, we brought all of the previous rules and regulations that are now part of it, and it looks like they all went into effect back in April. These we spent a lot of time, the council, I was part of that council, and we spent a lot of time, 2017, 2018, talking about regulations. We talked about whether or not to allow use by right. We talked about a buffer. We set it at 200 feet. We opted into the 3% sales tax, which we see all the time, which I think was like $1.1 million recently. We also empowered the mayor to pursue a 3% mitigation fee in the host agreements. And city council also considered at that time capping cannabis retailers at 10. And this was a lot. It's not like this came out of nowhere, and that I understand that people are concerned right now, but there was a whole bunch of discussion, thoughtful discussion back there. Doesn't mean that we can't have further discussion now, but I just wanted it clear what's on the books and the amount of work that had been done up till this point. And with that, I'll open the floors to councilors to talk about how we might want to go about tackling some of this. Because I know councilors are hearing a lot of pressure to do something. And I think that, that we can put our heads together and come up with a plan forward. Councilor Perry.
Yes, thank you. Just to bring everyone up to speed, there has been talk about bringing this issue to community resources, and I think that is a great place to have it. So that there will be future discussions about when we fit that in. I know there's a lot of stuff on our docket as we took a couple sessions off for the summertime and allowing all of the counselors to have a little bit of a summer break, but also to fit in all the meetings and stuff. So we actually canceled our last community resources meeting so that all of the members could attend that last discussion that they had in Florence. And it was very informative and eye-opening. So, I just wanted everyone to know that there will be, if you're watching now, there will be a meeting in community resources. So just stay tuned.
Thank you. Councillor Foster.
Yeah, Councilor Perry, I'm really glad to hear that you've discussed that, bringing that to community resources. It's something that, I was going to bring up in new business with city services next week as well. And Councilor Labarge had asked to bring on the agenda, and each of our committees has a different angle, which I think makes this really interesting, when I start to think about, it's like a spider web, to think about the number of layers of consideration. If we were to look at, is a cap the way to go or not, there's a lot of information that we need to seek. And so with city services, we have quite a few departments and department heads and tools at our disposal for one angle. In community resources, you have all of these amazing researchers and organizations doing this work as well. And so I think our committee work could probably be really complementary.
Councillor Maori and then Councillor Moulton.
Yeah, so Councilor Moulton, who is a member of the Finance Committee, suggested looking at, first of all, I just want to say, I think it is fair at this point in this juncture in Northampton's history to have this conversation. So I'm glad to hear that my fellow councilors are ready to do that. I think there's I'm looking for a lot of kind of updated, as much as possible, metrics that might come out of city services about impact, and also it's it's kind of hard for us sometimes to be proactive. There's something about city government that tends to react. So I think it's fair to approach this now in this way. And so so Councilor Moulton had brought up the idea of bringing the issue of capping to the Finance Committee to kind of look at the financial impact and unintended consequences and pros and cons. And I think that's a good idea too. So we might be getting all the subcommittees involved, but I'm putting that out there as well.
Okay, and then I think it was Councillor Moulton, and then after that, we'll go to Councillor Elkins. Oh, and then Councillor Labarge is up there. I see her. So, Councillor Moulton.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Maori. I do think that it does have budgetary implications, as Councillor Nash mentioned. The receipt of $1.1 million in excise taxes last year is a significant amount of money, and I do think it's a good time to have this discussion. We have 12 operating dispensaries, adult use dispensaries. There are 2 more host community agreements that have been approved. They are now before the Cannabis Control Commission. We got information from the mayor's office today that one of those is actually for 2 locations. So already there are potentially 15 locations that may be in operation in the city, and that excludes the Euphorium proposal for Florence. One of the things that struck me tonight was hearing from a couple of people who I regard as knowledgeable about this, about the impact of the density of the dispensaries on the city, and particularly on young people. And because all of these host community agreements are approved at different times and for different locations, I think it is appropriate to, as part of our consideration about what the potential impact of a cap would be, to look at now the sort of the mapping of where dispensaries are in the city and look at that question of density.
Okay, and then, or let's see, it was Counselor Elkins and then Counselor Labarge. And then Counselor Gore. Okay, good.
So I guess my question is, as a newer counselor, is it feels a little like cart before the horse to be sending this question to a bunch of committees without proposed legislation to go with it. I mean, sort of open-ended general discussions about a cap without like, what is the cap and who's, and so, I mean, I guess I'd be curious to know, is somebody going to be proposing legislation to add a cap, and wouldn't that be the vehicle? Like, wouldn't that go through the process of first reading and then referral, as opposed to us sort of all sending a general open-ended conversation to our committees? I guess I'm just a little concerned about the sort of open-endedness and lack of specificity before we expend a bunch of city resources and department heads and all the, we're gonna have lots of questions for people. So I guess it seems more productive to be asking them toward a specific piece of legislation. So I am very interested in this conversation. I guess I would like to see who's gonna, if somebody's gonna actually propose legislation about it.
So with that question hanging in the air, I think Councillor Labarge is next, and then Councillor Gohl, and then Councillor Maori.
I was going to ask the same thing. We're going to all these different committees, and we don't have an ordinance stating about how much capping do we want to do? Do we want to stay where we're at? I'm a little confused with it also. I think it's great. It's all going to go to committees. I think that we need to look at a roundtable on these committees with the police department, with the Board of Health. Somebody, our commissioner, Meredith O'Leary, I think this is all valuable, but we need to have some legislation here of what we're actually trying to do. Are we going to put one in for keeping the cap the way it is?
Well, I just want to respond to that question that you asked, because I know the counselors were kicking this idea around. That I wanted you all to be in the room to kind of be able to have a discussion, to kind of be able to feel this idea out. And so so we're doing exactly what I thought we should be doing. So with that question still hanging in the room, Councillor Gore, you are next.
I think that there needs to be discussion around it, but yeah, I also agree with Councillor Elkins and Councillor Labarge that we need some legislation. And I mean, I believe that we need to put a cap on the dispensaries at this point. I think it's just for the business aspect of it and for the revitalization of the city. I think that we've oversaturated the market a little bit on it. So that's my take on it.
Thank you, Councillor Gore. Okay, next. Who was next? Was it Councillor Maori? Was it back to you?
Karen Foster.
Councillor Foster can go first.
Oh, you know, I'm Councillor Foster by demand.
Wait, your hand was up before, Councillor Mary, but okay.
I'm practicing myself.
I'll just wander back in time. A few years ago, there was a proposed ordinance to cap it at 10 dispensaries in Northampton. And so, but I guess I know that this work can happen in a couple of different ways. One where a couple, co-sponsors will bring council an ordinance to then investigate. But it feels like a little bit of a research project to me, to really study what's going on, not only in Northampton, but in other communities that have had caps or that have looked at density. Feels like a bit of a research project, and at the same time, the community is asking us to consider this issue. And so my interest in bringing this forward tonight as well, just as a council discussion, is yes, we're all here in the virtual room to discuss it, but also as a way to embark on this learning, before it's coming back to the council. But then also a lot of times as potential ordinances are being drafted, that happens not necessarily in public because of open meeting law. So councilors will hash something out and then bring it forward, but that can take some time. And so, I think there's value in this discussion tonight and our committees looking into it and having a general discussion even prior to an ordinance being introduced. That's if I may take a slightly contrarian view on that.
Yeah, I was just going to, I'm sorry, I'll wait to be called on.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Great.
I was just,
Council Maori.
Yes, there you go. Yeah, we're trying to hold our filter on for a few more minutes, but I totally hear what Councilor Elkins is saying, and I thought about that too, and I thought about what an ordinance would look like, and it kind of got back to where Councilor Foster was, just in terms of the information gathering, and also I guess part of it was, and this is maybe what Councilor Foster was also saying, is that we're hearing from the community, and I had this urge to just as expediently as possible and municipal lightning speed, engage the community. And we, subcommittees, this council has made it clear that we are really trying to make our subcommittees dynamic places that in which the public can engage. So I think part of it was the public engagement. To be honest, I didn't think about so many subcommittees getting involved, so that might be part of what Councilor Elkins is saying in terms of time and resources. So I'm not opposed to having an ordinance go through and then using that ordinance as a vehicle to have these conversations. But I do have, there's so many big questions, and I was like, another select committee, and so I was thinking in lieu of that, starting the conversation in subcommittees. But I do hear Councilor Elkins' point. Yeah, I do think there is value in starting the conversation even without an ordinance in front of us, I suppose.
So Councilor Jarrett, and then I'm gonna take a shot. Go ahead.
Great, thanks. Yeah, thank you for putting this on the agenda. This is great. It's great to use new business in this way. I had requested that we talk about this issue at Community Resources, so I'm looking forward to that discussion. I have been in discussions with the Health Commissioner as well. If someone's ready to put legislation forward, great. Let's, they could do that. For me, I need more information to think about numbers and think about all the issues. There's so many different factors. So I'm not ready to put forward something concrete. I need to have those discussions before I would consider that. So I'm hopeful that we can have at least beginnings of some discussions, and then at some point some councilors will be ready to introduce, is how I'm seeing it, since our committees can generate, can have these discussions and generate things through there.
Thank you. So as the one of the two sponsors of that cap, there were some really key things we were looking at. The number one thing had to do with hearing from the concerns of the recovery and the prevention community. And so, people working in addiction prevention services, and also in particular, information for me from the SPIFFY, which is the prevention coalition that works with, that gathers information about high school and junior high students. And that, so they measure things like smoking, alcohol use, marijuana, and other things as well. And they could, Heather Warner could provide us with data. And I'm thinking maybe, that report could go to city services. It could go to the full council. The other thing is that I'd be interested in hearing from Chief Casper, because one of the things I've been, since we approved, we've stepped into this new realm, that I've been in her ear about, like, so is anything going up? What are the problems? Because Dennis Bidwell and I presented the cap as it was like a circuit breaker. It was like, we have this brand new industry. It's coming in Northampton. We don't know what the full impacts are. And that the idea was, if we set it at 10, that's where the cap was, that once we approach 10, we can at least invite basically the discussion we're talking about having right here. What are the impacts, and that we would have it would be a hard stop for a while. But the important thing was for us was getting this information. And I think at this juncture, here we are, we're almost 4 years into having decriminalized legal marijuana adult use. And I think the data's out there that will be helpful, or some of the, and I think between, Heather and the NPD and the health commissioner, we can get some really good information here as to, what's going on out there. And I would even venture to say, what are any issues around parking? And I'd like to know, have any incidences of youth, underage youth, buying in one of these establishments? A whole host of things. I know that Chief Casper's really good with data, and this would be out there. So that's what I'm looking for. Councillor Elkins and then Councillor Labarge.
So I have to say, I really have to say that so first of all, as soon as we start putting this on the agendas of any committee meetings or council, then it becomes a public, an open meeting situation. And so our general conversations amongst ourselves and our fact finding and all of those things become subject. I mean, I'd have to check with Attorney Seawald, of course, but I just think that once we put it on agendas as something, then it really curtails our ability to have general conversations about it amongst ourselves. And I know, not because I have any interest in us like having not transparent conversations, I just think that we need to be really circumspect about putting things on agendas and circumscribing and limiting ourselves in that way until it is actual legislation. Because I feel like that if we have legislation before us, if somebody, it doesn't matter if like somebody is like, let's put a cap at 100 or let's put a cap at 2 or whatever, we can have all the discussion that we need to have in open meeting and bring in all the department heads that we want to. We can have all those conversations. But this, I'm really troubled by and sort of a vague, not legislation oriented, end oriented discussion that gets kicked out to a bunch of subcommittee meetings. And I want to reinforce, I'm all for all of those meetings, but in the context of moving toward a vote on a particular piece of legislation. This just really strikes me as backwards. I mean, we can have community meetings all we want to. We can hear from people. We can talk to all the department heads we want to, and community members can talk to all the department heads they want to, and send us all the research they want to. We're here to talk about legislation. That's the point. So I have to say, I do not find it a good use of our time and our city department heads' resources. Now it really was an earbud. To just have discussions. I also think that there's some other issues that community members are interested in that this sets a precedent for, in terms of expectations, in terms of what's happening in community meetings, where we just have general meetings. And you know what I mean? Like, I think, you know, our purpose here is to discuss legislation. And that's what we should do. So I personally would object to, and would not vote to send things for discussions to subcommittees or committees without being tethered to actual legislation. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
And now I'm going to find my earbud.
Councillor Jarrett.
Thank you. So I just want to push back against that a little bit. And in my time, you know, we've had general discussions. We had one last year around zoning, and we had I felt like it was useful to have that general community discussion around zoning. And it's not my understanding of open meeting law that us having a discussion in an open meeting restricts us in any way from what we can do not in an open meeting. And we should check with Attorney Seawald, of course. But that's the point, is to be able to have that open discussion and not worry about open meeting law, because it's a posted agenda, it's a general topic. So I feel comfortable moving forward. I do hear the concern around the use of resources, and we'll obviously want to keep that to a minimum. And perhaps that could be through having a joint meeting. But I think coming out of these discussions, we'll have the information to be able to be ready to then propose legislation.
Councillor Labarge.
Right, that's, I have to agree with, it's becoming very confusing here, because the legislative part of it is important here on the capping. There's no question about it. But also, we do have committees. And I know for a fact I was involved with a roundtable at a committee. That was very, very helpful. And Councilor Nash, you just heard me say, with a roundtable, you have your police department, your Board of Health member, also you have your health commissioner. And I think we have the rights to ask questions and hear from them. And then we're talking about doing research. I have several papers already on research on how many cities are capped, how many don't have delivery, and how many do have delivery right down the line. And it's like, I don't know, I wish somehow that because of this discussion, that Alan Seawald would have been available tonight.
He is on vacation.
I know.
The nerve.
I know, you're right.
Councillor Jarrett.
Just want to, in our council rules, 2.6.2.4, committees shall have the power to hold hearings on and develop, review, and recommend policies on any matter within their jurisdiction.
That's right.
Councillor Elkins.
I just want to say, I mean, like any committee who wants to have a meeting or hold it, I guess my issue is just whether or not, like, we as a council, I guess it's unclear what we're doing here in the context of this new business discussion. Obviously, if Councillor Perry and I, as you know, a community resources chair and co-chair, want to like have a meeting on this, we can. So I'm not suggesting otherwise. I guess I'm a little unclear Are we having this discussion for the purpose of directing other committees to have these meetings, or are we with the goal of somebody crafting legislation? So that's all. I just, it's so when I say that I would object, I'm just saying I do not see anything here for us to sort of prolong the discussion on. Anybody can set whatever agenda they want to, because I love you all, and I would go to the meetings that I'm assigned to, and I would love the discussion. But I'm also very interested in what somebody actually proposes as legislation here in the face of what the community is asking us to do and talk about and think about. So that's all. So.
Right. Sorry, did I cut you off? No, okay. Councillor Foster, and then I'm going to hop in after Councillor Foster.
Yeah, I think open is sort of why we're here under new business right now, is because we can reasonably anticipate that this would be on an agenda in the future. It does preclude councilors from, having a quorum or more discussing the issue. And so this is just an opportunity to be like, hey, we know we have committees, we can talk about it. There's community interest and there's councilor interest in discussing this matter. And so, yes, legislation could come out of a committee. I think one of my own hesitations too we could have put something together in order to have a discussion, but sort of once you put the number out there, once you say, okay, I propose we cap it at 100, to use one of your examples, which is pretty unrealistic. That becomes the discussion. The discussion becomes the cap of 100. And I guess I'm still at the point of, should we cap? Which I'm hearing community members, I'm hearing that, and I really want to dive into it. But I think it's a slightly different discussion when there's not a black and white thing in front to pick apart. It allows it to be a larger, bigger picture discussion, which is, I think on issues like this, a valuable one.
Okay, so I'm going to hop in here, and Councillor Foster just basically laid out, why I wanted to do this here. My sense was the councilors wanted to talk about this in some way, and that I heard chatter, and as the council president, people are coming at you. Well, what do you think about a cap? And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to get into deliberating, but that we all kind of, we don't want to get into creating legislation in a way where we might violate open meeting law. So this is just acknowledging to the public, we've all been hearing about this. That counselors are interested in talking about it, and that yes, legislation may be a way forward. We have chairs of committees who could invite people to come in and start providing some information. And but I just really wanted to give counselors a chance to be able to speak publicly. What it came from was, I heard at that meeting a few weeks back that you guys were, the counselors present were over quorum. So that being able to speak in the meeting, you were forced into the listening mode. And that I wanted my colleagues here to have a chance to be able to say publicly, we're thinking about stuff. There's stuff coming, there's things we want to look at. Maybe somebody's ready to propose some legislation. Maybe we're not going to resolve this tonight, but we did have an opening discussion that community members can hear that we're listening. So, and that really was my goal more than anything else. Councillor Perry, then Councillor Moulton.
Thank you, Jim. I think you hit the nail on the head, is that this is the beginning of these proceedings and these discussions. There is chatter. I think it's important to understand that we are all in semi-new territory. While the cannabis industry has been, proceeding for a number of years in other places, Northampton is unique. We talk a lot about how Northampton is a very special place. And I think that discussions like these are very vital to how we move forward. And there's also a whole push and pull. You know, there's the reality of what we are here to do, which Councilor Elkins brought to the table, which is work on legislature. But there's also the fact that we are here as representatives of the public. And I think that I'm assuming that you brought this forward because there is a lot of public interest right now. So hopefully through putting this in different committees, we will give some of the public a chance to speak out. But I want to be completely honest with all of the constituents is that this is not a situation where we are just going to get together in a meeting and vote on a cap in the next week or month. This is, as Councilor Foster said, this is a fact-finding mission, and we need to learn more about the impacts on our community. And so realistically, this is going to be an ongoing conversation that we will have with our community. I have my own feelings about how it is. I see a lot of value in what the cannabis industry brings to Northampton. As someone who is, I've even said in this meeting, I come from the entertainment and service industry. And I've seen how weakened and eroded those industries have become over the last few decades. We find ourselves in a position where, cannabis has benefited financially to this city. They're bringing in dollars and resources. And so this is something that we should take with weight. And I thank you, Jim and Karen, for bringing this to the table to start this discussion. Hopefully the greater community understands that we are trying to hear and listen to folks. It might not happen as fast as people want, but it is happening. And we, again, are in a place that we can set precedents. When people talk about Northampton being a weed capital, I see something that, we are once again in a trendsetter. We are the first place to have a dispensary. Our mayor bought the first chocolate bar. These are things that are important. And the work that we're doing now, again, goes towards the future of Northampton. And there's a lot of talk about youth. That what we're doing here is important to the vitality of Northampton. So while there is a tendency to have knee-jerk reactions to things and seeing change, thoughtful deliberation and pacing this out is going to be for the betterment of our community.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Moulton, then Councillor Maori.
Thank you. Thanks for all my colleagues for their thoughtful discussion tonight. I think the message here is that we are listening to the community. We hear that there are concerns. It is a very, very complex issue with a lot of different facets for us to consider. And I think we're not voting on anything tonight. There's nothing yet to vote on. We are being responsive, and I think that we'll be looking for ways in our committees to address this issue. And eventually, it could well lead to legislation.
Councillor Maori.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear the parallel that Councilor Elkins was laying out, and I think we need to be thoughtful about when we have these discussions without legislation in front of us. I think this issue, because of the amount of outpouring and the gravity, we on one hand, we have businesses that after a pandemic, we're trying to support in every way we can and revitalize and keep our city vital. On the other hand, we're hearing from our community, and we want to respond. And I kind of think about like going forward in a way without legislation is kind of showing our work, right? Because if we get to a point where we have a cap, people will understand our logic and we would have had that engagement. And if we don't, we've also shown them why we didn't, right? So that's why I think in this particular issue, with the amount of community engagement around it, it's particularly important either way to really kind of have some transparency in terms of our thought processes and really engage the public on this step, so that whatever direction we go, and at least there's the kind of understanding about why council went that direction.
Thank you. Okay. Well, you know, sometimes we don't have to finish discussions where everybody's agreeing on what to do next. I'm sensing that maybe
I'll
Councilor
make a
Berry
motion
has-
to adjourn.
You are
Second it.
Yeah.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Perry, seconded by, who was it?
Councilor Labarge, the smart
Yeah, all
one.
right, give it to Councilor Labarge, all right. Okay, there's no discussion of adjournment. Laura, roll call, please.
Counselor Elkins,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Gore,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Moulton,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
and Counselor Perry.
Yes.
Okay,
Happy birthday, Counselor Nash.
it's not for like another hour.
Oh.
So should we unadjourn so we can, should we unadjourn?
Oh.
Have a great birthday and a great trip.
Thank you.
Birthday.